Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down around the campfire for short rest with me and my friends, Careful Cantrip.
Oh,
Whom you can definitely hear.
Yeah, boy.
Looks like you can
hear me?
Looks like you can
Hear me now?
Thank you very
Check
much.
1, 2.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Please let me know if the volumes are awful, because tech goblins. It looks like you guys might be a little loud, so I'm just going to pull you down a little, especially because there's more voices on your end than mine.
Yeah.
Alright, I think
Hey, is Fancy in chat? Fancy, how do I host someone? Fancy, what's the command to host someone?
I think just slash host. Slash
that how it
host
goes?
Robert Hartley GM.
And then your name? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
First you climb in through the mouth, and then you ingest them in their body,
You just
and
have
then
to
afterwards
possess
you come
their
out of the chest.
No, that's how they host you.
Ah,
They're your host. You're the parasite. Also, what are you doing here, Doug?
What am I doing here?
Yeah, what is this?
Because someone doesn't put passwords on their Zoom chat. That's why.
God damn it! He managed to sneak his way in. Do you know how many short rests I've done without having probably my closest D&D collaborators on? Anyway, he's managed to sneak his way on in the guise of Careful Cantrip. So before we get too much further into this, let's do a little introductions first. Welcome, Careful Cantrip. It's great to have you on short rest. Who the hell are you?
Kind of nice to be here. We are Careful Cantrip. Should we introduce ourselves individually?
Yeah, go down the line. DM
Well,
Dave, let's start with you.
Everybody knows me on your chat. Okay. Yo, DM Dave coming to you live from
It's your boy.
L7J postal code. Make some noise, Robert Hartley chat. What up?
Thank you very much. That's just as I expected from you, Rayna.
Hi, I'm Rayna. I'm a player on CC. Yay!
Yay! Bobby,
Yeah.
are you a sexy
Hi.
lumberjack?
Oh, thanks. I'm Bobby. I do the art for Careful Cantrip as well as I'm one of the players too. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Rob?
I'm Robert. I'm also another player on Careful Cantrip. I am the backup artist for Careful Cantrip, unofficially. And so
Backup
when Bobby
artist.
wants a break, they come to me. So
I rely on Rob.
Yeah.
I heard backup artist as in like a backup singer. Like
I like that better.
yeah.
I just sort of sing in the background while Dave's DMing. All right, and that's everybody. Dag,
Sad face.
who are you?
I'm Michael. I'm the Dead Aussie Gamer, and I am the newest member of the Careful Cantrip family. As I will be joining the Careful Cantrip team on campaign 2 as of next week. Jeez, next week. That's very close. But yes, that's how I snuck here, really. So yeah, super exciting.
Pretty exciting indeed. All right, so we are having a short rest. We're in the middle of something. What are we needing a short rest for? What's the mission that we're on? What are we on like a heist mission or like an escape? Are we on a typical dungeon crawl?
No, this is the moment. We are in the calm before the storm, Robert Hartley.
Yeah.
We are literally, our citadel has been surrounded by hordes of undead and fiends, and we've been able to barricade the doors. We're pushing everything up against the wall. We've got about an hour. So Rob, if there's any questions you have, if you have any
this is
unrequiting love that you want to admit to someone looking in Dag's direction, this is your time.
Bobby. No, so we are in a short rest in a citadel against undead hordes. What are we eating on this short rest? Have we got snacks? Have we got rations? Have we got some? Are we having a feast to be like the last thing we'll ever eat? Or you don't want to get something too heavy, then you feel a little cold.
I would say probably the other party members who have died already.
I was just gonna eat a Pop-Tart, man.
Bobby's got Pop-Tart in the corner of our citadel, but Dave's like chewing down on legs. Everybody else is like, there's a pantry full of food. We're in a citadel.
I'm definitely not
well-stocked.
attracting them with potato and gravy.
Ooh. Okay.
That'll
Getting
go
great.
good with Joe.
Oh, poor Joe.
Just his what is it? Leg meat or like rump?
Every day is leg day with Joe.
All right, what are we drinking? Just water skins, tea, booze.
Ooh.
We're getting messed up, wasted before this big fight.
Yeah. No, it's I'm inventing as a true artificer. I'm inventing a 2-4 before we go out, and that's what we're going with.
A 2-4? I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah,
with the term.
twofer. Yeah. Oh, a twofer. A twofer is a good old Canadian term when you want to take a rip down to the LCBO there, bud, and grab a twofer. So it's 24 case of beer. That's basically.
Okay.
Yeah. You grab a fucking pack of darts while you're down there, bud.
2-4. I get it.
2-4. I see. As a mathematician, I see what you did there.
Yes.
All right, so I'd like to start off our short rests by talking about name. So obviously your names are pretty explanatory as to how you got those, but the name of the show as a whole, Careful Cantrip, where did you get that? Where did that come from?
Well, should I take this one, Dave?
You can feel it.
All right. Well, way back, playback when we started in COVID playing together with a small group of friends, and Rob was there, and Dee and Chris, and who you would know from our campaign 1, and Jess, of course, and we were all talking about what type of name that we wanted for our show, and Chris, who is the pun master, came up with Careful Cantrip, Careful You Can Trip, and he sent us this little mock-up of a slippery when wet sign.
Yeah, I love it.
And we were all like, yep, that's it. And then that's pretty much how it happened. Yeah.
He really is the king of puns.
He is.
Did you have like a list of alternatives and that was just the punniest?
We did have a list of alternatives.
Yeah,
but...
the rest were all awful.
I don't remember any of them.
Yeah, they were
Me
really
either.
bad. Yeah.
Must have been pretty bad.
Yeah, no, it was... Well, I mean, it's Chris puns, right? It's just kind of like once in a while, man, he hits real hard.
Careful Cantrip just stuck right away. So it's like after that, it was just like we just never looked back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to this day, still have not created a cantrip called Careful. So
Ooh, we should.
Isn't there an evocation wizard thing that's like one of the features they get is something about careful casting or something where they can seclude some of their friends from the area of effect or something like that. So
I don't know. I've never read the rules before.
Or you could make like, or you could say it's like a fake cantrip, right? Like it's a cantrip called Careful, made by like a prankster, and all it does is it knocks the caster prone.
Ooh, I like that.
That's all it does. And it's like, what's this? The scroll of Careful. I'll cast it. Careful. God damn it.
So how long's Careful Cantrip been going? When did you kick it off?
Well, we all know the answer to these questions.
I don't.
Okay. Well, we started officially in October. Oh my God, is it 2020 or 2021?
We all know the answer to this question.
Oh yeah, all of us know the answer.
No.
Wait.
2021.
Please.
Yeah, no.
No.
October 2020.
2020.
2020. Oh
This
my
is
God.
this is the
Are
product
you
of the
sure it wasn't
This is the
2019?
product of the last like couple of years. Like ever since the 20s are all just going to be 1 year. Everybody's
Seriously.
we're going to
All
look back in
runs together.
history and be like, it was a strange phenomenon where all 10 years just became one long
Yeah.
10-year period.
And it
Yeah.
was awful.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was awful.
Yeah, and all the history books, there's just a squiggle as the last digit because no one really knows.
Yeah. So it was 2020. Did we land on the date there? 2020, 2021?
Yeah, October 2020.
October 2020, because
2020.
I met y'all in January 2021, I think.
Right,
So
right.
And so
Way to go, new guy.
and so it is the it is a product of the pandemic kind of thing. Like you started off because you were like playing remotely anyway, or what?
I tricked everyone.
You were like, just let's all hang out and chat. And then you're just hanging out in a Zoom chat, and then you're like, I've got some dice here. I'm just gonna be fidgeting. Yeah. Don't worry if I'm just gonna be making noises here. So, if you were hypothetically, if you were a goblin in a war zone and you were approached by an orc, what would you do? Before they know it, they're like, wait a minute, are we playing D&D? Damn it.
Yeah, no, how we all started was, the pandemic, at the beginning it hit real hard. We weren't making jokes about it. It was a very isolating time for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So right around, I guess we were probably 6 months into it at this point in time. And I'd been running campaigns for better part of like 3 or 4 years before that actually hit the proverbial fan. And we had a lot of friends who, they were very isolated. So I said, why don't I create kind of a drop-in type game, almost like an adventure league with a loose story around it. So you can kind of pop in when you want, and if you didn't want to hang out that night, no worries, kind of thing. And yeah, we started with, I think we originally started with like 11 players or something. And then it just kind of dwindled down to essentially the people who became our cast members. We ended that kind of little short campaign thing. We did a variation on Curse of Strahd mixed with a little bit of Ascent into Avernus. Right. And yeah, I mean, we had a great time. We were starting to get used to the technology because everybody had switched to VTTs at that point, and Zoom, and we were all pretty adept at that. And we thought this was a lot of fun and enjoyed it. And then my lovely wife Rayna decided, hey, why don't we start streaming and have fun with it? So that's the essential birth of Careful Cantrip right there.
Cool. What made you think to start streaming it, Rayna? Like, were you already like a big fan of Twitch and watching other D&D streamers, or?
I was, as they all know, they're gonna roll their eyes. I was a huge fan of. Here we go. I was a huge fan of Critical Role, and I was like, "What is that?" First of all, watching D&D like on not being in the game was a really new concept for me. I didn't know that people like cared about that or were interested in it. But then I was like, hey, I like doing this, and like Dave's such a good DM, and like our games like have the same sort of like, I guess, story base that like people could follow. And I was like, let's do it. It'll be fun. Trust me. Don't worry. It'll be fine. And everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's fine. I'm just going to hit go live. Just
just joins for a Zoom, and then it's like,
we weren't really actually told.
Rayna, you seem you seem distracted. What's that? I'm just reading the chat. What do you mean the chat? What? Yeah, we've been live. I've been streaming these for the last 3 months.
Yeah, I was about to say 3 months later, and then we found out that we had a community. It was great.
Yeah.
So, how many of you played before Careful Cantrip? Like, all of you had played? No.
Yep.
Oh, Bobby didn't.
Bobby was a newbie.
Yeah. So, how did you get involved
behind
then,
the
Bobby?
years?
I broke him in real good.
Okay.
All right. Don't like the way you said that.
The wink was definitely not necessary.
I definitely didn't expect to be joining a campaign either. It was very much also a product of the lockdown and everything. I got very bored. I thought, hey, I'm going to start a stream of my own. And I started a little art stream. It was doing fairly well. It was, it was early, but it seemed to have some gusto behind it.
Do you still stream?
But then no. no. Just through Careful Cantrip. But then I still wanted to draw on my off time, and so I went into like streams. D&D was always like fascinating as a concept because I love drawing monsters and dragons and fantasy stuff.
Awesome.
Whereas I had never actually played the game. So I would go into D&D streams and be like, hey guys, I'm what did I say?
The
Great Goblin Artist.
The Wandering Goblin Artist or something like that.
I think it was something like that.
I would do some like, control paste here in the chat situation and be like, at your DM's earliest convenience, have him roll to see who gets fan art made. And, draw fan art for a random, D&D Twitch stream.
That's cool.
Careful Cantrip in the very early days of campaign 1, I think it was probably like you guys' episode 10 or something like that.
Something really. We had
No,
like
you joined on episode 10, I think.
no 13. Bobby came on 13, 12 or 13.
13? I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Rayna, I'm
It
really
was
glad you're
early.
here.
It was early. Production value was.
Otherwise, the entire
daunting.
conversation will be like, "So when did you start?" I don't know. When did you
Going around
guys?
this
When
time.
did you all join? I don't know. Bobby, when
I
did you
don't know.
arrive? I don't know.
No idea. But it was very early on, and I was like, "Oh, this group is kind of fun," and then afterwards they were so like.
So you reached.
Excited to
So
have
you were just
someone
watching them.
watching.
You reached out. You were watching. You reached out and said, "Hey, do you want artwork?" And you guys were like, "Yes," and also join us. How did that?
Well, afterward, they asked if they could if I would jump on a Zoom call with them or something, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." Just
And then
or
like
whatever.
after the Zoom call, Rayna was like, "Okay, and we're just gonna raid." And you're like, "Wait, was this?" And it'd been on the stream
Yeah.
the whole time.
Well, yeah, no, it led into
We're
a
live now.
guest. It led into a guest spot on their show. They're like, "Do you ever want to play D&D?" I was like, "Yeah," and I played one shot of 4th edition before that
Right.
from one of the other people who were like, as a thank you, here, we'll
Right,
do
gotcha.
a one shot with you. It wasn't fun, and then I. Then I did this
Why-
one.
I love that we could all infer that from what you were implying there, from tone of voice and things. But then you were like, I just want to make it clear as well. I want to put it out there in case anybody's watching.
In
I
case
want to make
y'all
it very
were
clear
curious,
it was not
I did
fun.
not enjoy myself doing that 4th shot one. But yeah, I went into a guest character where I played a little pompous sorcerer dude named Lucy, who eventually I got asked to stay, and my character that was supposed to be a one shot ended up being my character for the entire campaign that ran a year and a half.
Awesome. That's pretty cool though, to find people through they're already streaming, and then you're like, I like
Totally.
this. Here's some stuff, and then get involved. But the rest of the Careful Cantrip were already like friends before the stream, or yeah.
That's a loose
Yeah.
word.
Wow.
You already knew each other before the stream.
Yeah, we.
No, Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Not everyone knows
Hold
you're
on.
joking.
Let me get. Oh yeah, this isn't our channel. Shit.
Yeah, but it's
You
mine.
guys basically
Yeah, but it's
a year
mine, and everybody
before,
knows.
So
Yeah, I think pretty much there's enough crossover here that everyone in chat, if they're not on board already, I feel like
Everybody-
I feel like
Everybody watching will know
one-sided
my
conversations.
humor is the same thing, and
Why did Rob invite these people? They're so mean.
Honestly, I keep
odd.
asking myself the same question. I don't know.
Rob was so mean to that lovely dead gamer boy who.
No, he was so polite.
He was so polite, but Rob was so mean to him when he arrived. Rayna, you're too wholesome for your for this, for
I
this
know.
level of
It's
humor.
It's a problem.
One of
I'm
these
sorry.
things is not like the other one.
It's a mask. Behind
Don't
some
say
stories,
that.
she can be quite cruel. I promise.
So
wait till the cameras are off and nobody's watching, and then you get the real Rayna.
Rayna.
So how long had you been playing D&D together before the stream? Like you said, you'd been DMing about what 3 years something before starting to stream it, Dave?
Yeah, three or 4 years before that.
Same campaign or like different things, different people?
No, what did we do? Okay, so I started off with just ask Rayna. She'll know.
I was gonna save you there, but
I'm just gonna jump us up to the one person wanted screen
just
instead.
go to just talk to her. That's
just me
fine.
and Rayna.
No, we played. How did it all come about? Oh, I remember. So it's. I'm
we can
trying
get
to
there.
give
We
a
can
little
get there. We got
backstory,
2 hours.
okay?
We got
Like,
this.
Yeah.
okay.
Can we just wipe out the DM part of DM Dave and just put it on Rayna? Just like go Dave and DM Rayna. Like, is that?
Fine with me. Yeah. Anyway, so we it's funny. I used to play a lot of Minecraft. Like
That
a
is
lot
funny.
Of Minecraft.
Hilarious.
That's not the fun. Turn it over to you, Rayna. Take it away. Have at her. Jesus, why did I agree to come on? This show?
I don't know. It's not like you did. It's not like you haven't worked with me.
Yeah, I know, really. I just thought it would be better because there's no trivia questions. But,
There are later. I've got them all lined up.
Well, gotta head out, guys. Thank you so much for yeah, so I used to play a lot of Minecraft on servers and whatnot, and I would set up these kind of quest lines and NPCs in different houses and stuff. And I was like, man, I wish there was a game that like I could just really dedicate myself to with it like this. And a friend of mine who has been playing for years and 20+ years kind of thing said, hey, idiot, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons before? And I was like, oh, what, that nerd game? As I played Minecraft, and yeah, and then he sent me the books for it, and he said, learn this and then go play. And that's really what got me into D&D in the first place. So we played a campaign. It's always been loosely set in my homebrew world, and we played probably about 3 campaigns around that before we started the actual like kind of drop-in game. And they all lasted for about 6 to 8 months, each of them. So decent amount of time.
That's cool. I don't know how you finish a campaign in 6 to 8 months, because I started in 2016 playing the game, and I'm still playing those same campaigns because we just never get the chance to actually keep. It's all homebrew stuff, and it's the sort of game where the players in it are all the sorts of players who much prefer to sit around a campfire and roleplay than do any like adventuring dungeon and so the level ups happen very few and far between, and then they're like level 10 after like 6 years.
I'd like to point out for that, Rob, prefer is a very strong word here. I just want to point that out. I wouldn't say I prefer to sit around a campfire trying to cook chicken for 4 hours, but
why? That's the easiest campaign to prep for. I mean, just, okay, what's on the menu for the tonight, and go.
I tend to have stuff prepared for like, okay, this is gonna get to the, and then they'll just act out like real time conversations about like the ethics of whether or not they should have punched that half orc in the face for being a raider. It's part of orc culture, so is it? Yeah, but it's bad against other people that he's raiding. Yeah, true, but no. And then they just debate about, is it racist to assume that orcs are bad because they raid as part of their culture? I don't know. And then 4 hours later, I'm like, well, we'll pick up here next time then.
How long have you been playing for, Rob? I don't think I've ever actually asked that.
Yeah, I started with 5th edition, and I started not long after 5th edition came out, maybe a couple of years, maybe. So I'm pretty sure it was, my first time playing was March 2016, I want to say. And then first time DMing was September 2016. Okay. So yeah, I played one game. It was immediately heroin in my veins, and was like, I need more of that every possible. And then the guy who ran the one shot didn't want to do any more, so it was months until I actually found a group that wanted to play again through a local board game shop. And then very quickly, the guy running it. He has a habit of doing this. He'll start a campaign, and I really love his world. He's got a fantastic brain for world building and stuff. And so he's always got fascinating ideas, really interesting stories, and then he has no drive to continue after like episode 10. So we were something like eight sessions into the campaign when he's like, I feel like I need a break. Do you want to take over? You seem like you're keen on the game. And I was like, sure. So I bought myself the books and just jumped headfirst into my DMing and been a forever DM since.
More out of necessity than anything else.
It was at first, yeah, but I was definitely keen to give it a go because I was so into it. Like, I'd gotten the PHP and just read it like it was an actual novel, just like cover to cover, back to front, and learned all of the rules. And I've got a brain for pedantic rules, things like that, so I absorbed them and remembered them, and helped with flow when I started DMing, because I didn't have to stop to look up rules and stuff, because and I watched a lot of Critical Role, and while watching them, anytime that they said a spell I didn't know, I'd like pause it and look it up and be like, what does that spell do? And I'd be like, oh cool, this is going to work really well for this situation. And then I go back and play the episode and they immediately get it wrong, and I'm like, oh, that's not how the spell works. And then I was one of those annoying nerds in the comments being like, actually it's got a vocal component that you shouldn't be able to. And then, it spend some time in the D&D community and on subreddits and things, and you're reading about like what's good and bad to do at the table, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not a good thing to be doing, to be picking people up on how they're playing and stuff.
So that's interesting. So are you still playing in the same guy's world, or have you since subsequently kind of created your own from scratch?
Oh, my own from scratch, yeah, my own from scratch. Even that first one wasn't me taking over his world; it was just me taking over the game, the weekly D&D night, and I started with my own world straight away. Mainly out of fear of getting stuff wrong, because D&D had been around for so long, and there's so much established history and lore about the Forgotten Realms and things that I was like, I don't want to start with an established module or anything. I just wanted to. If I jump into my own world and make up my own ideas about the gods and stuff, then nobody can tell me I'm getting things wrong. Whereas if I'd been if I'd been trying to set it in the Forgotten Realms, and I'd be like, oh yeah, it's a 2-day walk to Neverwinter, and then if I had a nerd at the table, it would be like, actually, Neverwinter's in the north, and it's 7 weeks from here.
You'd be very surprised how easy it is to get over being wrong in D&D. It's like that.
I mean, again, that's out of necessity for you, though, right?
Oh my.
Rayna's so disappointed in us.
I've been married.
Yeah. What were we talking about? So you played in your own kind of homebrew world, you said, but like you were doing these. You mentioned doing like Descent into Avernus and Strahd and stuff as well. So you were mixing the content from that into your own world, or what?
Yeah. So I like the concepts behind things. I don't like the kind of how the modules are written. Like, I'm not trying to be an ass when I say this, but I hate how Curse of Strahd is laid out. The fact that they immediately hop into Bavaria, and then they can go right to the castle right away if they want. I mean, no adventurer is going to be like, hey, yeah, I'm not going to go in there, and that's going to kill them right away. I mean, there's high level shit in there. It's
quite Dark Soulsy in that it's like you just go there and you die, and you're like, well, I suppose we don't go there next time.
Yeah, but I mean, I love the fact that it was very fleshed out. You could play it in a lot more sandboxy setting. And then, just mix it up and change it however you want, kind of thing. Yes, Dag, you had your hand raised. What would you like to say?
Did you consider locking the doors to Ravenloft? Because
just go to the castle and it's just locked, and there's a sign on it that says "Gone fishing back in 10."
Out of order sign on it.
Yeah, that's it. Just come back later.
Later.
He's like, what's the DC to open this? 80. Why?
the sign says
on
back.
The door,
the sign says the sign says back in
piece
10.
Of parchment. It says BRB on it.
It says back in 10, and they're like 10 minutes, and you're like, no, 10 levels. Go away. go away and level up.
A level locked door.
Level locked. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit. They went for like open world, did they, with Strahd? And then you were like, I don't really like, because my players aren't going to pick up on the hints of like this. Don't go there yet, because it's not. Yeah, you're not ready for it.
So I sent them to Avernus, and then Avernus took them to Barovia, and they basically started on the opposite side of the map. And then I just kind of walked them through. I think it was the Abbey first, then they went to the village. And I think from there we went right to the temple, and I switched things up a little bit, and then we went to go visit Strahd after that. So again, I liked certain elements of it, but I've never been one to, well, you know me, I don't follow rules. So I just kind of pick and chose, and that's generally how I world builds. That's how I put my sessions together. Is I build cool stuff and then put them in my bag, and when I need something for it, I just pull it out, plop it in, and away I go.
Nice. And so when it came to starting a stream, did you say like, let's start afresh, or were you like, let's just take a different part of the world, or let's keep everything that we've done in our home games as established lore of stuff that's happened in the game? Like, is it a continuous world from your home games to your stream?
I always make sure that that there's consistency throughout each one of the campaigns, because I mean I don't want to have to go write a whole bunch of history. Like, there's, the general concepts and, major events and whatnot. Sure, I'll write those in. But it's so much more meaningful for players when, and it happened in our first campaign. I took their old characters from the campaign we had just run, and made them a lot older, had a lot of experience behind it at that point, and then introduced them as NPCs. And just to for any DMs out there, if you've run multiple campaigns, to bring your player characters back as NPCs and as different individuals that they can interact with. It's that little piece of nostalgia. It's seeing a familiar face, and it gives that consistency in believability for your worlds as if you're playing with the same people year over year kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely something that I've been wanting to do forever, but then they just never finish this campaign. So I'm like, okay, nobody's ever finished a player a character that can just come back as an NPC later. And I don't know, man. It's I'm looking forward to the day when I do start a new campaign with the same players, and then they get the chance to look back on their same NPCs. But maybe I should forcibly move things along at a bit more of a clip and be like, all right, let's railroad this a little more because I need to get through this before we all die.
Well, I mean, yes and no though, because you can. I mean, it really depends on if your players want to run that sandbox or if they want to run much more of a narrative feature to it.
Yeah.
My players, they prefer the narrative aspect of things, and same with our audience. They like to hear the story that we put together over the course of time. So I always find a way to kind of have a main central plot point, and I usually do that through the scope of the villain. What is the villain trying to accomplish? Very much like a Sauron or a Darth Vader. I think those are the perfect archetypes for building a campaign, because you have the up and close is or first and foremost is what is the villain trying to do? How are they? And then eventually the heroes start to kind of coerce with that and become part of that storyline until they're almost running parallel with each other or in direct contact with each other. And when the story's over, the story's over. I hate it. It's like in TV shows when it's like you come to a natural end and then they add on another season just because
like,
they got.
Let's
and
milk
then
this a bit more.
This is when
they
milk
a stopping point. You moved past the stopping. You missed your stop. And I mean, if you talk to my players, like I think you guys, you'd prefer it that kind of way as opposed to more of that sandboxy, do whatever you want kind of storyline. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, I personally like being part of a story more than anything.
Sorry, go on.
No. Just there's it. As long as it still feels like which Dave does a really good job at making it still feel sandboxy, and there are definitely sandbox elements to it, but there is an overarching thing that's going on.
Something's going on.
How you choose to interact with that thing is how it kind of gets.
Yeah, my games with Viva la Dirt League are quite narrative driven. Like there's a thing happening and I need to push them forwards because we're making half-hour content every week, and it's like I need to have we film for a whole day and then we cut it into half-hour chunks. And so I need to have something happening. It's easy because it's a full day of filming at a table. It's easy to just like sort of sit back and be like, oh yeah, this is a moment where we can, and then I've got to remember, oh no, actually if we do that for half an hour, that's an entire episode where nothing's really happened and I've got to move things forward a bit. Whereas with my home games, it's almost entirely sandbox because I'm with those games I really enjoy just the exploration of the world and the fact that the players get to choose wherever the hell they're going. I've got things going on. I've got like end of the world level prophecy stuff that they have to deal with at level 20 kind of things in mind that is going to be happening, but because I use that same home world for two different home games, a paid game, my Twitch Tales game, and another one starting soon, they're all happening. They're all these different adventures and stories and things are happening in the world. So if one group doesn't want to pick up on the clues I'm dropping about a necromancer gaining power over in the east or whatever, then it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to force them over that way in my home games, whereas I would in the Viva games, because I'm like, yeah, it'll keep happening, and somebody else, one of my other groups, will eventually pick up on, oh, there's a necromancer over there, let's deal with him. Yes, Dag. Thank you for that.
Rob, I've been playing in your game, and I've just looked at it. I've been playing in your game for almost a year now, and I've killed one thing.
Legit? Is it coming up to a year? When did you join my game?
I've killed. It was in October last year.
Holy shit!
And I've killed one monster.
It was, to be fair, it was a monster that kept coming back. You've killed it multiple times.
It still counts as one.
It was a monster that reforms after you killed it, and you killed it again and again. The entire monster.
But that just means we have
that one monster was an entire arc of the campaign. Just FYI. But you have killed.
He still hasn't killed it.
You've killed one monster, and you've had a lot of conversations.
We've had lots of conversations.
and we might be getting to a point where you're eventually, soon, in a few more episodes' time, going to be starting the next arc of the campaign.
There's a certain point, Rob, where, freaking hat in hand, I'm going to go to a tavern keeper and ask if he's got any big rats in his cellar. I've never done that in a game, okay?
I will throw more random encounters at you if you wish.
Yes.
Just murderize Dag. Yeah, I'll just throw big monsters just specifically.
I'm not ungrateful. It just dawned on me when I was like looking. When did we start that game? And then I found out it's.
Jesus. Wow. Yeah, I need to pull. And also, just so that people aren't thinking the wrong impression of how we play on average of like once a month. So
yeah, I know. Jesus, Rob, sounds like I don't know. Do you still want to be DM or you want Dag to take over? I mean,
yeah. What were we saying? So you had you incorporated these things into your world when you started. How does your sort of muse come about, Dave, when you're coming up with the story for the first season of Careful Cantrip and you go, I need a big bad guy? Do you start with the big bad guy in the plot? Do you start with the characters as the people that they want to play?
Always go with the big bad first.
Right.
I always go with because it gives me, I feel like it gives me a roadmap of kind of what I need to do to get from point A to point B for that major plot line kind of thing. And then a lot of it comes in once I actually get the character sheets. I know what they're all about. Generally, I think it's like 2 or 3 page questionnaire that I give out to my players to get some specifics about their backstory. That really digs in deep to their history, how they actually feel about things. So like one of the questions is, how do you feel about the monarchy, or how do you feel about murder or low level crimes? How do you feel about magic and faith and religion? So I get a good idea of what the character looks and feels like from that perspective, and then always asking, well, what kind of story are we telling here? Like, and I'm not looking for specifics like, I want this to happen, I want to get this magic item, I need to do this. It's just kind of like, what's the theme you're trying to tell with this character? Is there a theme for the character, or do you not know it yet at this point?
Right.
And then kind of I look at the overall arcing plot, because again, that's my PC, right? The big bad is always my PC in my head.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, okay, so what are they trying to accomplish? And I kind of create an almost like a decision tree, where it's kind of like, well, in order to do this, it needs to do these 3 things, and then in order to do these 3 things, there's these 3 other things, and maybe their low-level minions are there.
Right.
And then that's how I kind of plot out the adventures behind things until the players start to become a little bit more interactive with the storyline. And then I kind of take it from them as getting a feel for how they're playing the character, where they want to go with their player, and just kind of give them a couple hooks to see if anything interests them, and then really start to expand on that in terms of their arc, I guess you would call it. Right.
Do you start with the BBG but don't come up with like a theme for how the whole thing's going to go until you've got the players then? So you start with an idea of what the guy wants or who the guy is going to be?
Yeah, basically it's kind of like I create a thesis for the big bad.
Right.
Are they trying to raise a god? Are they trying to take over the world?
Where does that decision come from? Like what they're trying to do?
I mean,
just been watching Star Wars, so you're like, oh, I'll steal from the Emperor, or do you like take from things you've been watching, reading, or is it?
Well, I mean, generally, there's only a finite amount of types of stories that you can tell. There's a billion ways to tell them.
Yeah.
But there's only a finite, is it save the princess? Is it stop them from creating this thing or obtaining too much power?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, you've got maybe 5, 10 kind of key plot points, I guess whatever you want to call them, and then it's just what kind of variation do you want to put on them? Do you want to twist it on its head this time and kind of flip up the script a little bit? For example, the big bad might be doing something for the greater good that they never saw in the end place. A prime example of that I always think of is Mr. Freeze from Batman. He was this criminal trying to get all this science and get all this money, but at the end of the day, he was trying to heal his sick wife, and that was kind of his overall plot. So,
I always think of the Rock, not Dwayne Johnson, the movie The Rock, the movie with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. The bad guy in that, fantastic, because it's I always think of him as being like a perfect example of a villain that you can understand why he's doing what he's doing and empathize with his reasons, but not his methods.
So
great or good.
You can always, it's really what it boils down to is, what do I feel like, how do I want to play this PC this year, or this campaign? Do I want to make them really dark? Do I want to make them tyrannical? Do I want them to have those elements of, you do feel bad for them in the end? And then I attach one of those story themes to it and just kind of sit in front of a whiteboard for hours and just kind of start plotting things out and putting ideas down. And,
do you plan for it to be like, this is going to be a 20-level campaign, this is going to be a 3-level campaign, or do you think like this is going to go until I'm bored of it, or until they've killed this guy?
I generally, I don't really have an answer to that. The only thing I can say is that I generally don't stat my BBG until we're getting close to that final arc. So once and it really depends on where the story takes us, because again, I don't generally go down the road of, okay, well, I'm a rules guy, or I'm very much a systematic guy from that perspective. I'm very improv when it comes to my overall games. Like I said, I mean, there's times where I just kind of grab things out of my bag and say, okay, throw this on the table and see what kind of adventure I can come up with this. I already have the story and the ball rolling. What can I build from the things that I have in front of me to make it consistent and give me that inspiration behind things? Also you add on to the fact that, I would say, I could be wrong because I haven't been through all of Twitch, but I would definitely say we are in the top 10 for most interactive streams, because we have the channel point redemptions where you can actually, have an effect on the story. It's not just kind of like, well, you get inspiration. One of the key ones we have is called Change of Fate, where I draw from a tarot deck, and then depending on if it's upright or inverted, that has some kind of story impact and overall effect for whoever player that they redeem the channel point for. So again, very improvisational from that perspective, because it has to be if you want that level of interaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. For the rest of you then, the cast, when Dave approached you to say, like, do you want to be a part of this thing, and do we want to do this on stream with an actual, like, a new campaign, new characters and things, how did you go about deciding what you wanted to play and what sort of themes you wanted to explore with that character? What sort of characters to be?
Rob, you go first. I feel like you haven't talked yet.
I'm just here to hang out and chill. No,
I know, but I just
so
feel
you're
like...
talking about for our new campaign 2, correct?
Well, I was talking about campaign 1, but
campaign
because
1.
campaign 2 is coming up, you can talk about both. Because you're currently
1,
in that process of...
Well, for me, campaign 1 was just more about trying something I've never done before, a completely different playing style. Campaign 2 is going back more to my roots, where I have a lot more in depth as far as I have now pretty much a clear understanding of what my character on any type of emotional type of reaction should be based on the situation, which my first character was a monk and I played kind of a more stereotypical where he wasn't really emotional. He was very straight-laced and stuff like that. So now I'm going back to like, okay, feelings are now going to be a lot more involved in my character decision versus just here's a right and here's a wrong answer type deal. So, and
is that again like a different route that you hadn't explored, or is that something that you liked?
The first one was one I never did before.
But this one's back to that, or is it another
more
different
my playing
thing
style? Yeah,
right.
No, this one's going to be more more of a comfortable playing style for me.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be pushing myself because I know it is more storytelling though.
Uh-huh.
Because before I've been playing a long time, started back in 2nd edition, mostly 3.5.
Right.
So a lot of mine is more mechanic builds and stuff like that. But playing with Careful Cantrip, I've been really embracing more of that narrative, role-playing aspect of it, while still implementing my old backstories.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my first attempt to really combine both of those at the same time and try to really create a really dynamic character for people to hopefully like and follow.
Cool. Are we keeping secrets? What you guys are playing in campaign 2? Is that secrets?
Yep. It'll be announced on Tuesday.
I was going to say, is it announced like during the first episode, or is it just like, is it leading up to it? You're going to be teasing.
We actually have a giveaway happening in our Discord right now, where we've created silhouette artwork for each one of the characters, and if you can guess correctly, then who's playing who, then you actually get the very first publicly released CC D20 chonker.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So they have to guess. They have to guess all of the silhouettes correctly, like match them all up.
Yeah,
and it's
more so who's playing.
It's just who's playing them, or is it? Do you have to guess
and...
like you don't have to guess the race and class thing? Okay.
No. It's just who's playing what.
Yeah.
If you go that far, there's so many options right now. You mess up one time, you're already done. Trying to add race, class, and all that stuff.
Is this everybody, or is there people who couldn't make it?
Missing 2.
We're missing Swiss Dave and Jess. They are both they're both on vacation on other sides of the world right now. So they're coming back.
So there are 6 silhouettes to guess and 6 casts?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. I could do the math.
And fun fact, we released the silhouette artwork before we announced Dag joining us, just to be total dicks.
It's like guess who's playing this one, and we don't even have all of the information as to who the cast's even going to be.
Yeah.
Well, we were wondering about that.
So what I'm hearing is you don't want anybody to win the D20 chunker.
Basically,
it's really nice. I mean, if
it's really nice to know I get to keep it if no one wins.
You know.
Also, I don't have to post it. No postage costs.
Yeah. Well, the joke kind of was, since we had one of our characters who's kind of known for having character deaths. So it was just a joke that one of the extras were a backup character already pre-planned.
It's just a backup.
All right. Well, the maths on how many permutations is 6 factorial. So it's 6 times 5 is 30, times 4 is 120, times 3 is 360, times 2 is 720. So there's 720 possible combinations of those 6 things.
I was gonna say, Rob, you looked our Rob actually looked that up.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? You did the
how many
maths
it
on
was?
Yeah. So if you're gonna guess at random, you're likely to get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's like the lottery.
Yeah, so let's give people some
roll dice. You have a good
let's give some clues to help them then without giving it away. So we've got from Rob that you're going to be going back to someone a little more in touch with emotions, a little bit more led by their emotions in their decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Dag, give us something about your character.
Ooh,
something that doesn't give it away, but something esoteric.
Okay. I mean, this is something everyone knows about me, is I don't like playing what I look like. So, like if I play a barbarian,
racist, right?
more likely it'll
It's 'cause you're racist.
I more mean like if I'm playing a barbarian, usually it'll be something that you won't pin as a barbarian just from looking at it. Likewise, if I'm playing a wizard, it might actually be a sorcerer who is just really dumb and is applied to wizard school and walks around with a spell book pretending like he's really smart but actually isn't. The silhouette will not help you based on what I am playing, but it is very multifaceted. Very multifaceted.
Okay, Bobby, give us a little teaser about your character.
Sorry, I got distracted. Jess was just calling me, so I don't know if she's trying to like say hi or what. But so my character for campaign 1 was very much, like I said, he was kind of a pompous, pretty boy, very like he started out very cowardly, and that was kind of the typical thing. And what I'll say is I went very far in a different direction based on that. So...
Okay, so there you go. You've got some information to be going on there.
At least one of those descriptors is completely the opposite of what it was. Maybe not all of those descriptors,
pompous,
but at least
pretty
one of
boy,
those.
coward. Okay. Rayna?
Well, I'm sort of on the same bandwagon as Bobby. The last campaign I played a very bubbly, naive, and all about love character. So this time I kind of wanted to not necessarily go the complete opposite, but
gritty down to all about hate.
I'm not
Kill
playing an
us all.
edgelord. I can say that. I'm not.
Rayna's playing an old man.
Just somebody
Every time
grumpy,
Rayna
somebody
speaks, we just
passive.
put on like some
a
noir
9-year-old
jazz.
Yeah, so I wanted to challenge myself, as a role player. I'm being so careful with what I'm saying. And so I also picked a class that I'm not very familiar with, because I feel like that class will affect my role playing.
Right. Okay.
Mysterious.
Is it?
Hashtag breaking all the rules.
Yeah, things like that. Things like that. You're like, oh, that's the class will influence the role play. That tells us something. And then you think about it, and you're like, no, it doesn't. All of the classes
All of them
influence the role play. It's the point of picking a class. Very exciting. Dave, who are you playing? Just tell us your
Everybody
BBG
BBG,
immediately.
Yeah.
That does actually remind me though. When do you like to typically introduce the BBG? Because I've seen a couple different like avenues of thought on it. Like, do you introduce them in episode 1 and be like, bam, this is going to be a big bad guy, and you get to know him already, and then the rest of the campaign is about ramping up to being the sort of experience that you can take him out. And then there's others that are like, you should never know. You should hear whispers of them, but they're a mystery until the very end.
Yeah.
What do you?
I generally, again, it really depends on what the style of character I want to go with is. Is it the up close and personal mastermind who has no fear in coming close contact with the party? And we did that kind of last session where there was numerous occasions where they brushed up with the big bad over the course of the campaign, and it was great fun because at certain points I would just kind of drop it that he would all of a sudden show up, and they knew that this was going to be the big bad. And there was one point where they were at this huge gala with very important people, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they announced a honorable guest, and it was the big bad. And he just kind of came in and he sat down and had dinner with the party, which was a really, really cool experience to have that kind of moment where it was just this utmost tension, and he sat with it with just so much confidence. And then the way that the campaign actually worked out is they didn't know who the actual big bad was. And the way that I had set that up, the way I kind of think about it is that if you have this super ultra powerful big bad, there's probably stories about him. There's been interactions. He's built his power up in some way, shape, or form. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's called the same thing from different people.
Yeah.
So, at first they met him originally as the king from the jungle, and then they met this other entity known as
Solus.
Solus, yeah. And then there was another example of him being what the hell did I call him? The
Lion Savior
Darius.
or something?
Darius.
Darius.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also the Lion
Darius.
Savior.
There was also
Yeah.
the Lion Savior. So there was a lot of different ways that he was talked about. So in different places that they would go to, they'd hear about this evil villain, and eventually they start putting it together that it's like, oh, everybody's talking about the same guy.
This is just because you didn't take notes, right? This is because you kept forgetting what you. Just,
No, that was
Dave just kept forgetting what he'd called him.
I don't know.
It's so hard to
The Lion Savior.
make us not know
Name
who the guy
Shredder,
was.
though, guys. I don't know.
Yeah. But then it turned out being one of the player's mentors, who she
Actually, Rayna
Me.
played she played a time wizard, and her mentor they were trying out this experiment one day. He wanted to go back in the past by like 5 minutes just to try it out. Lo and behold, as the story goes, he got thrown back about 1,000 years into the past. And that changed his kind of, molecular consistency, where he essentially became this long-living entity. And then there was a very pivotal choice at one point in time where Rayna had to decide, does she go with her mentor because he had potentially, something good that he was aiming for? Because it's all relative. Good and bad is always relative, right? Yeah. Who's the evil? Who's the hero? And who's the villain? It's all whatever side of the aisle you stand on, right?
History is written by the victors.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's that's how we played this last one. There's other times where I'll do it where it's kind of like more of an emperor, where you hear about him through his legions and his lieutenants and the minions leading up to that point. But again, it's all going to be based around what fits for that ideal of, okay, what story theme am I going to? And and that's what I try. I always try and keep that header for myself of that thesis I was talking about. And again, great tool for any DM, just to keep that single thesis in your mind. And then that way, if everything's driven to that, you have that consistency built in already, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I often say about like improvising. Oh, how do you know what to come up with in the spot and stuff? It's like, just know what the foundations are. Know what the foundation of what your bad guy wants, and how they think they're going to get that, and have the consistency of knowing what the world is and how people would react to that. Because then the improvisation just comes because you just put yourself in that situation and be like, well, how would they react to this situation? Given what this particular city thinks about religion, how would they react to a paladin coming in here and summoning the Almighty to smite down whatever? Like you just put themselves. You can't possibly prepare for everything in your notes being like, if the paladin comes in here and smites down the Almighty, like then you can't write an eventuality for everything. You just create the world and be consistent with how the world would react to certain things, and then you can improvise it around it. If you stick them in an encounter with the big bad guy way earlier than you expect to, just as a product of being like, look how strong or confident or dangerous he is, you can't possibly take him now, and then they surprise you by attacking him or something. Then yeah, you might be caught off guard, but you're never caught with your pants down, because you're like, well, I know how the big bad guy would react to that. He is. Yeah. I have put the work into thinking about what his goal is and what he's put into it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I find that especially when it comes to and I tell people this all the time when they ask me a little bit about my DMing style and what my thoughts on certain things are, there's lots of people who, especially when they start getting into DMing, they super over prepare. They do try and do exactly what you said, is they think about every single aspect and where it can all go. And I did the same thing. I remember in our earlier days, and when I first started DMing, I'd have 20 pages of written stuff per session easily. I'd spend all week writing it. And eventually it got to the point of where I said, well, this isn't fun for me. Like I'm not enjoying this aspect of it. It's too much to think about, and usually I get it wrong. Players will always surprise you regardless of what you try and prepare for. So when I flipped my thinking and just started thinking more in terms of, okay, if I have my anchor, and if I've really fleshed out what that anchor is, then I can improvise most things after that. And as soon as I started doing that, I really felt like I was playing the game more, as opposed to being just the DM who has to prep everything.
Right.
It was a change in my way of thinking and how I played as the DM, and I found that I just enjoyed that method so much more, because now not only are they surprised, but I'm comfortable enough to surprise myself.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking it. Trying to be comfortable enough to surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Allowing the decisions made at the table to also be stuff that you, because the players are all playing at the table, they're all coming up with stuff they didn't know they were going to encounter this particular thing, and so they're coming up with what their character would do in that moment, and allowing yourself that situation as well to be like, I didn't have everything planned out to the T. The things that I plan out in more detail tend to be when I need, for story reasons, the players to do something. I can't just like, I can write in my notes, Joe the NPC will leave when this happens because I'm controlling him and I know I can make him leave when that happens. But if I ever get to a point in my notes where I have to write, and then Makiwara will leave, and that's Dag's character, I'll be like, well, then I don't know Makiwara will leave. I can put the situation in where I think he will leave based on how he's played and based on how much I know of Dag and stuff. But I don't know he will leave. So the only time like I'll get back into over preparing is putting a lot of other stuff, a lot of fail safes, coming up with contingencies. So like I need him to leave in order for this next scene to work or whatever. Then I'll be like, okay, I think I've set up enough that he'll leave. But if he doesn't, then this other kid comes in, an NPC comes in and says, "Hey, I need your help over here," and I'll set myself like usually 2 or 3 contingencies to just get him the fuck out of this scene because I need him out of the scene for me to progress what I'm going to be doing. And I'll try my best to not put that behind a particular role. Like he doesn't have to roll a perception check to see the thing that I need him to see in order to get him out of the scene. Because what happens if he fails that perception check? Then I'm like, ah, crap. I've just locked my own story behind a role.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. But there's also moments, and this is why I'm not really an advocate for sandbox games the way that a lot of people describe them as. Because I don't think people truly understand what a sandbox game entails. A sandbox game is Minecraft. Minecraft is literally you can go do whatever you want whenever you want to go do it.
Yeah.
But that's not what players come to the table for.
Yeah,
They've come for adventure.
What's the call to action?
Exactly, and they need it. So there's a certain amount of like sandbox with instructions of how to build the sandcastle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's a matter of, okay, drop the hooks on the floor and see what they pick up. What do they find most interesting? Where do they want to go with those characters, kind of thing? And then once they've kind of picked a path, and you can see that they're interested, and you can do that through their amount of engagement through the various plot hooks that you've put there. Then you can get a lot more specific with it, right? You kind of can pull them along. You've got them on that hook, so just kind of reel them in a little bit. And the more that you reel them into that moment, whatever you're building, the less options that you need to give them, because they're dead set at that point in time, right?
Yeah, I've got for my home games, I've got a sandbox in the sense of like it is a world that they can do anything, and I'll 100% allow them to go and do this thing over here if they want. But I have made it clear that there is as I've said before, like there's like a world-ending prophecy sort of level 20 situation that's coming, and it's coming fast, and all of the powerful NPCs are like talking about it and telling you this and that and the other. And one of them's a warlock patron, an archfey warlock. And so his archfey is a really useful NPC for me because I can just pop him in at any opportunity and be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I put a neon sign over here saying, bad guy this way. I need you to deal with it. And it's still sandbox because they can be like, nah. And they have been like, nah. Literally coming up to a year since that warlock patron turned up, and he's a very well-known character for people who know my stuff. He's called the Merry Gentleman, and he's like a archfey. He wears a green plant suit,
cool.
A green suit made out of plants and stuff. He turned up to them about a year ago, having just killed a couple of they just killed a couple of fire giants. And he turned up out of the blue wearing a red suit. First time in his life that this warlock's ever seen his patron wearing a red suit. And he was anything but the merry gentleman. He was the angry gentleman. He stormed over to one, slapped one of them unconscious with a single strike, just like knocked him on his ass. And he was like the fighter of the group. And then he walked over to the warlock and was like, what the fuck are you doing? I gave you strict instructions that I want you to do this and this and this. And you haven't done any of those things. Blah, blah, blah. I need you to get on with it. And that's coming up to a year since. And since then, they have relocated a whole society of drow, which wasn't one of the things he wanted them to do. And they took them to a new home where they're going to be safer. And then when they got there to settle them, because this is kind of the evil way that I work, there's always going to be more plot hooks that are going to be distractions and side quests and stuff. So they got these drow to this new city, but then in the area of the city that they were setting them up, a couple of the drow started dying, and they were like, oh, well, we can't just leave them like this. So then they dealt with the problem that was killing the drow. And then they had like a Christmas party essentially, because it's now getting up to the Midwinter Festival, and they just like it's taken coming up to a year for them to even get on with one of the 3 things that the Fey gentleman was very angry at them about. Like, yo, get on with the task. But that's the nature of me running like a sandbox on rails kind of thing. Like it is a sandbox, but there is a story that I'm trying to push them towards. There's only so much I can push them before eventually I'm just gonna have to introduce him. the Archfey as the big bad evil guy instead, because he's like, you've not done my plans. Now I'm gonna have to kill you.
So to make matters worse, in that particular game, I joined in after that warning.
warning.
The last game we played, I actually communicated with that Fae and said, "Stop slowing us down."
yeah. He started arguing with the Fae creature about it, and he's like,
stop.
Stop talking. Stop having entire sessions talking around a campfire, and you might have done something by now. Get up into the mountains and deal with that guy that I keep alluding to.
Oh, but I mean, and here's the thing that bothers me a lot. It doesn't bother me, but it just, I see a lot of DMs struggle with it, is the fact that they have a particular story they want to tell, whether, it is sandboxy or not. And everybody has it. Like, I've got my story to tell, you've got your story to tell kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're playing a game for these people. You want them to come to your table to have fun.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, and absolutely, I think, unquestionably, you are one of the most professional DMs I've ever met. I've seen you play, I've seen you run games, all of those kind of things. And it's just you know how to maneuver properly, and that's really what it all boils down to, especially when you're doing it more on of an improv basis, is you have to be able to maneuver and change your plans accordingly, right? So they might be relocating the drow, and they might be having these Christmas parties, but you're probably already thinking of, okay, how do I develop this into the big bad that I have, kind of thing. But at the end of the day, as long as the players feel like they're having fun and they have the agency to do whatever they want, it really doesn't matter. If you get upset over that thing, it's like, that's your pride.
It
really is what it is.
I made a story. You're not doing my story.
Yeah.
I some of my joy sadistically comes from putting in like a main story, as it were, and then trying to distract the players from it as much as possible. People in Twitch Tales, my interactive game that I run on Twitch every Sunday, they know that very well, because there's a lot of things that have happened already in the campaign. They're only level 6, but there's a lot of things in that campaign already where Apis, the main character, has been told or given very clear hints that there's something going on in this area or whatever. And then I've gone out of my way to be like, hey, every time you go to a new town or you talk to a new person, I'm going to put in extra little plot hooks, and you can't possibly follow all of the threads. So you're going to have to eventually come to terms with the fact that, oh god, I'm going to have to ignore this necromancer in the woods because we need to deal with this green dragon instead, or whatever. And then that's perfect for me, because it allows me to go, whichever threads they don't follow that I find interesting, I can be like, oh, I'll flesh out this thing more then, because they ignored it. They had to ignore it. I made them ignore it, and so I'm like, right, perfect. Now this guy's managed to gain in power now, and I find that really balancing as well, because if you like, I'll tend to like balance the hooks for the level of the player, because I don't want the same thing you were talking about earlier with Strahd. Like, I don't want them to go like, oh, Rob's given us a hook of a necromancer in the woods, let's go deal with it, and then I'm like, psych, he's like level 20, screw you, he kills you. So whenever I'm giving hooks, it's level appropriate. But if they ignore it to deal with something else instead, then that thing stays level appropriate, because if they're ignoring it, it's gaining in power. It's completing its own plans, or something like it's snowballing and steamrolling, and eventually when they do get back to deal with it, it's still level appropriate for them.
Yeah. That sense of that ultimatum is so powerful.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like you have to go do these 2 or 3 things. All of them are important.
Yeah.
What do you want to go do? And those kind of decisions, that's the agency that players are looking for. They're looking for to be able to be put in those kind of moments. there's very few people that I've ever met that have played this game specifically as more players than DM who don't necessarily want to be the hero. They might say that they don't want to be the hero. They want to be the murder hobo. They want to get as rich as possible. They want to do all this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, Bruce Willis in Die Hard was still a hero. He was kind of a shitty person, but he was the hero, and he went into it kicking and screaming. Or the anti-hero, another perfect example. They look and feel like a villain, but they're the hero. So when you give them choices that are hard to make because they are the hero, it's so impactful at the game, at the table, because it's those decisions that are of consequence, right? And it makes for amazing moments at the table all the time. But 100% agree. Ultimatums are great tool. It's a good way to say screw you for not following my plot.
every good party knows when you have multiple plot hooks that you split the party.
Yeah, you just gotta split the party, deal with all of them. Deal with all the plot hooks at once. I think it's a good way of allowing your players to decide what their character arc is as well. Like, the DM has so much power in the game that it's really good to give the players the opportunity to tell whichever story. Because if I'm giving you lots of different plot hooks, if I'm saying there's this going on and this going on and this going on, I'm also saying I'm fine to run any of those stories. If you want something that's kind of creepy and weird and bizarre, then go and follow the thing that I'm indicating about the hags or the great old one Warlocky Cthulhu fiend cult or whatever. But if that's not the sort of thing you wanted to do, then there's also this other thing that I've been hinting at over here, and I'm fine to play that story as well. So as the DM, I'm like, here are all the cards that I want to play with. And then the players get to decide, like, oh, this one intrigues me. So
that's an interesting question that I have. What does your session 0 look like?
Well, before we play anything, I send out a consenting gaming form to get all my players to tell me, have you got any phobias, any triggers, any things? That's cut off on stream, but it says allergies suck. BRB. So I send out yeah, allergies suck. B. I send out a consenting gaming form. It outlines like how much from like A to D. How much are you okay with the inclusion of the following as story elements: drugs, sex work, spiders, eyeballs, gore, sexual assault, all these sorts of things. And people can go down the list and be like, an A on my form is I'm perfectly happy with the inclusion of this topic in any format. B is I'm okay with including this as a topic, but as long as it doesn't really happen to my character. C is I'm okay with including it as long as it's like alluded to or off screen and we don't like actually see it. And D is hardline, don't include this in any way. And then once I've collected those from my players, I will collate them and make a hardline, softline thing, a document to just like make sure that everybody's aware. Like, hey, we're not going to be touching on spiders at all in this campaign, and we don't want to be talking about them. Your familiar shouldn't ever be a spider. You should never, wild shape into a spider or whatever because somebody's put it as a D as their hardline. We're not going to be doing that. So that's part of the session 0. The other part of it is that I usually send out a survey of sorts that says like a rate on like 0 to 100 how much you're interested in the following. Like, are you motivated by gold and wealth and accumulation of power? Are you motivated by film noir sort of crime mystery themes? Do you like dungeon delving? How dangerous should your encounters be? Like, do you want every encounter to be on death's door kind of thing? And do you want to be able to breeze through it? So I get like a percentage of each of those different things. And that tells me what sort of story we're going to be playing. Is it going to be a silly consequence-free romp where the consequences of one episode don't really affect the next, or is it going to be gritty realism drama with lots of consequences, reactions? And then that's pretty much the extent of my pre-playing. And then if it's people I haven't played with before in any capacity, then I might actually run a proper session 0, which is just playing a game. I'll do a one shot with the characters that they're thinking of playing, and I'll have no obligation to include what happens in that game as like canon to the rest of the story. Yes, Dag.
Oh, Dag has a
Can I
question.
just
Yes,
say
Dag.
that as someone who has obviously done a lot of Rob's games, the Session Zero game on Rob is actually really good. And I've got to say, he has one of the prettiest consent forms I've seen anyone use. And if they're not available for people, they should be. Like, 100%. Drive-through RPG, like, $1 for the consent form that Rob uses is a steal. It's very thorough. It's very in the mood. You know, you kind of like feel like you're getting like one of these scrolls for a quest. You actually do
it goes
feel
in with the theme of my overlays and stuff, which is like paper and parchment.
Yeah, it's very cool. And you know, the thing is I think stuff like that, like especially with Session Zero, Robert definitely goes above and beyond when it comes to like setting a mood for what to expect when you get to the table. Like even if you've never played with people that have been coalesced before, you all go in with the exact same knowledge of what to expect, you know, like stepping onto the table, which I think, and I would like to just send appreciation for that.
Thank you very much.
Because yeah,
it's
really,
my consent form is available on my Patreon, so if anybody does want to see it, it's one of the low tier rewards. You can have access to that and use it in your own games.
I find the consent form really interesting. I've never given out a consent form because most of the time with the people that I'm playing with, you know, I've known a lot of them for years.
Yeah.
And you know, there's topics that I'm not comfortable running. You know, things like, you know, sexual assault or racism or anything along those lines. I'm not comfortable running it. So it's just it's inherently never going to be in my game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested to know more about the consent form. Like, is this? Do you find and Dag's already said it how much he appreciates the consent form aspect, but do you feel like there's anything on the consent forms that I don't know, like what am I trying to say? A prime example is like Rayna hates spiders, right? She absolutely detests spiders, but
Sure.
I've put her up against spiders in the game because there's an element of, you know, I do it in a if you do it in a comfortable setting, is it actually, you know, does it help with that fear in some shape or form? You know, being the hero
that's why I ask, because I'm not going to presume to know whether it's better for that person to face your fears or not. Like it's up to them to decide whether that's something they're comfortable doing. And that's when somebody who, like one of my players as well, is a huge arachnophobe as well, but on his consent form it's A's all the way down. That's not saying that he wants to see content about sexual assault and stuff, but that's him saying that I'm happy with, and he knows me really well, he's been playing with me for years, he is confident that I will handle it appropriately if it comes up. The sexual assault thing, for instance, people have, you know, it's really easy to say, especially in current sort of sensibilities of like, oh, there's no place for it ever in any of your stories ever. But I put it on my consent form because if everybody does say, I'm okay with this being included, there is a place for it in my games because I tend to run a quite a realistic thing. I will never show sexual assault in like we'll never act anything out, we'll never have it happening to any of the players, any of the player characters, but for instance half orcs in my world are usually a product of sexual assault, and we don't ever have to include that in any sort of graphic way, but because the person who is playing a half orc in one of my games, I made sure that she was okay with things before I included it in any capacity. And if she wasn't, I would have handwaved it as being like, oh, it's one of those rare situations where a human and an orc had a consensual relationship. But because she was okay with that as an inclusion, it has led to pretty much her entire story arc is that the next big bad guy that they've got to kill a bunch of like generals on the way to the big bad guy, and one of the generals is her father, her biological father, an orc who is the leader, a chieftain of some war clan up in the mountains, and that's pretty much the next act of the campaign is them going up into the mountains to find and confront him. And the only way that we've ever dealt with it is that she once had every time somebody levels up in my games, I tend to give them like prophetic dreams of some kind that help like explain why they're getting these new powers. And one of her level up dreams was her having, she was experiencing memories of her biological mother who died in childbirth. And so the experiences she had was like she was working at a hospital, and then there was some warning bells saying that there was a raid happening, and then it flashed from that to her being like in the back of an orc wagon as she's being kidnapped, and then she's in a tent, and then she saw like these like greyish orc fingers pull the tent back, and that's all. And then it like faded to the next scene where she's like got a pregnant belly. And then the next scene where she was being rescued by one of the Knights of Kavosna, one of the sort of law enforcement of the game. And it was like, because it was like a moment of dream, we touched on it. It was implied what happened. It was all fade to black kind of stuff, but it still helps her to tell the story of like who she is and her sort of dramatic arc of her character being like overcoming that's how she came about, and who her biological father is versus who her adopted father is. And she's got this really loving relationship with her adopted father, who's a monk at a monastery and taught her martial arts and how to use her own orcish rage in positive ways to sort of to affect the world in a positive for positive change. And it also touches on topics like racism, like are orcs all bad just because of their culture is in this way, or is their culture this way because they've been rejected from society and things like that. So I think like I feel like if you're playing not the right sort of game, if you're playing in that sort of a table, there is place for any topic that could come up, as long as you're all on the same page about whether or not you want to include it. Which is why I think the consent form is important to see. Are you okay with including this in a veiled manner? Are you okay with including it in any manner at all, or would you prefer? No, I prefer we just don't talk about spiders, because I'm the one who with the arachnophobia, and I'm the one who gets to decide whether or not I want to face that and face my fears.
It's really interesting, and for the sake of chat, because I know there's a lot of people, let's steer away from the terminology. I think it's just best if we because I thought about it after the fact, and I think it's important that we show compassion. We'll call it extreme content.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of while we're having this conversation, because I think that censorship is a very interesting.
Yeah. You.
Oh yeah, sorry. I do need to actually jet. But before I do, I do want to just chime in super quickly on this one, because I think it's a super important topic. It is a very fine line, I think, between creating a narrative sense of discomfort through things like, if I want to make a bad guy, they will obviously victimize in some way, shape, or form people who are important to my players, and that's getting a narrative response based on the emotions of the characters. But for me, the consent form is to prevent accidentally overstepping a boundary that we may not even see just because we didn't ask. It would be the equivalent for you to sort of create a horror game like a Call of Cthulhu game and then take out a rubber spider and throw it at one of your players.
Right.
Like, yes, you will get a response. Of course you'll get a response. It doesn't even matter if they're in the consent form, but it's very different because you're no longer working the narrative to create that sense of horror. You are now just frightening a person. And that's not, I think, what anyone at a D&D level should be really trying to do. You're not trying to force an emotion on someone else. You're trying to invite them to go through that door themselves and join you in this world of imagination you're creating. And if they don't want to go through that door, it's not, I mean, I'm not saying you can't. You could literally put up a big sign saying, sorry, like, this is what this is about, and if you're not comfortable with it, don't come through. But at the same time, if you want your friends to be a part of it, you need to make sure that you're fulfilling the role of a good host, and you're making those concessions. And I think it's only very recently that we've started to really embrace the idea of making those concessions, because we've started taking away a lot of very toxic attitudes like, oh, just suck it up, oh, you're just being sensitive or whatever. These are terms that not even 5 years ago, but these things were very common and dictated how we should enjoy the game. Nowadays, it's way bigger. We have more friends, we have more people who are welcomed into this space, and more DMs, I think, need to kind of be willing to embrace those ideals and make sure that they're not necessarily pandering to people, but definitely just being mindful and being understanding about how they do stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But if you have to jump, then I'll
I
let you
do.
jump.
But
before I
thank
go
you
into the
for
next
having
one.
me, and thank you for inviting me to the Careful Cantrip cast, and thank you for inviting me to the short rest. I'm gonna leave, but if I can do a super quick plug, I'm Michael, the Dead Aussie Gamer. I'm joining Careful Cantrip this Tuesday for season 2, but I also have my own stuff on Twitch, and I'm gonna be in half an hour over on Gen Con TV main stage running through the breach. So if you want to check us out later, then feel free. Or no, like do what makes you happy. There you go. Yeah.
Gen Con TV, is it? I can raid in after we're done.
It's the main stage. So Gen Con TV main stage.
Gen Con TV main stage.
I think Dag was saying they disabled raids.
Yeah, I think they disabled raids. I mean, you can try, but if they, I mean, just.
if they don't want my viewers, they can't have my viewers.
What if they're my viewers? No, I'm I'm leaving. Okay, I'm out. All right.
Thanks
Bye,
for joining
everyone.
us. Bye.
Break the. All right, hold on, wait. I'm gonna break the chat. Ready? 3, 2.
He's broken the chat, but I'm joining with my phone, and we are good. This should be. I just need to shove him into the space where Dag was. Bam.
Oh my god.
Perfect.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael. I'm the Dead Aussie Gamer. This is my face. This is my place. And all right. Yeah. How do you? What about your Dave? What about your session zeros? What do yours look like?
I mean, generally, I'll be honest. I don't do a lot in terms of session zeros. I do a lot of one-on-one work with players beforehand. So generally, and again, I generally play it safe. I play more of the comic booky, Disney-esque kind of style where I'm not treading on areas that are too light. I think I can tell a very, very good story without realism isn't necessarily something that I go for. I like big, grand, high magic, all of that kind of stuff,
enough.
right? That's kind of my jam. So I do a lot of one work with my players. So I'll generally give them the questionnaire. Then I'll sit down and kind of chat with them about their character, get those ideas in terms of give me some more of the backstory about this aspect. Your parents. You said your parents disappeared. Well, what happened to them?
Yeah.
What's the specific back? So it gives me it gets them thinking initially with the questionnaire, and then I can dive a little bit deeper with them in terms of fleshing out the backstory a little bit. And again, I mean, I've typically played with people that I've played with for years, so I know the hot topics that I should be staying away from and shouldn't be. I mean, a lot of these people are like my closest friends kind of thing, right? So it would be embarrassing for me to introduce something that they weren't comfortable with that I didn't already know about beforehand.
I think it can happen. I think people can
absolutely
develop phobias and triggers and things to things that even they didn't know they had until it comes up in a game, and they're like, I never realized that I had a huge thing about body dysmorphia or body horror stuff or whatever it happens to be. So I think it's important. It's one of my big thoughts about session 0 is that it's misnamed and that it implies that it happens once before the campaign starts, and then that's it. And I think it's better to call them a check-in session or something like that, where I think it's important that we do have that conversation, even if it isn't a whole game. But I think it's important that we have a conversation every so often to be like, is everybody still enjoying the content, and is there anything else that you seemed like you weren't enjoying that last fight? Is it because of the content, or is it because of the blah blah blah? It's important to just check in and have conversations.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you there, and I do check in with the players quite often from that perspective. But I think there's a certain level of trust that we've built within the group where it's kind of I know where their hot buttons are. I know where they shouldn't be doing those kind of things. A prime example is in our last campaign, there was a moment where Jess and I really got into it. Jess isn't here today, but while we were in character, it got pretty heavy at one point in time, and it was through that role play aspect. And we both talked to each other afterward, and we both knew that none of it was personal, none of it was we weren't stepping over any lines, and it was creating for that interesting moment where we were pushing those particular buttons. But there's the extreme content. I generally stay away from just on an overall perspective, because again, I don't think it's necessarily needed to tell a good story. I'm not saying that they don't, that it doesn't. I mean, I look at someone like George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
Perfect example. That's very extreme content.
Yeah.
That's just not really my jam.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. Like, yeah, I don't think it's needed to tell a good story at all. I think if it comes up in my story, I'm not going to shy away from it. If again, I want to be very clear. This is if I've already got the consent of everybody at the table through the consent forms and the just open conversations that we have. If I've already got that consent and I know that they trust me to handle things in a certain way, I'm not going to shy away from it if I feel like it will tell the story that I'm trying to tell. If it's going to be invoking the sense of creepiness or fear in the characters, then I will use body horror and stuff. And then generally I will do a check-in right immediately afterwards, even like the same day, like right after the session is over, or even after the scene is over. I'll just be like, is this okay? Like, I'm not going too far. It doesn't cost you anything to just break it and be like, pause, are we good? Step out of it for a second. Everybody's still okay? I do that all the time when there's like heated arguments between players. Sometimes the role play gets super intense and people are ready to like throw down, and PvP is possible of happening, and I'll pause and I'll be like, are we cool with this isn't seeping over into real life? And everybody's like, no, we're good, this is epic, I'm really enjoying this drama, this story. And I'll usually also say, like, it looks like PvP is going to happen. Are we all cool with that? Anytime that PvP does happen in my games, I always turn to the person that is being victimized by that first initial act and be like, are you cool with them trying to do this? And then I'll turn back to that person and be like, no, they weren't cool with it. So you can either still attempt to do it knowing that they're not cool with it, in which case I will give you an automatic 1. You'll fail whatever you're trying to do, but the character will know that you tried. And that will like affect the relationship. Or you can retcon that and say, like, I'm not going to try and steal that thing from him. I'm not going to try and stab him.
Yeah. And that came up in the one shot that you did on our channel where I
when
killed Jess's character right at the end.
Fantastic ending.
And Jess, to her credit, so about it, she was like, absolutely.
She's like, yeah, man, let's
you
do
can totally
this.
kill
Absolutely.
me while I'm laying unconscious on the ground.
Yeah, perfect stuff, man. That was such a fun one shot. Is that available on my channel yet? I'm not sure if it is. You guys have you're editing that for. Is it
It's up on YouTube.
It is up on YouTube. I think I've got so on my channel I've got a document on my YouTube pointing to the link to all the different places that I'm in on other people's channels. I'm pretty sure Fancy has added that to the list. So yeah, if people want to see that one shot,
that was
they can find it on yours. It was so much fun.
A lot of fun.
It was
good fun stuff. So I'm going to open up to questions from the chat as well. People who watch my short rests know how much that I ignore you all while I'm chatting with my amazing guests. But I do catch the questions, especially if you've used them during the using the channel point redemption stuff, because it means that I can just open up my requests queue like this, requests, and then boom, I can see all of the questions that have been coming in. So if you have been asking questions, I will start answering them now, but if you haven't, then get them in now. In the meantime, I feel like I've been doing a lot of the talking. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you guys want to talk about? Give us some teasers for... actually, let's start with teasers for Campaign 1, because a lot of people in my chat, my community, have watched Season 1 of Careful Cantrip, so where can they watch it, and give us a hook on why they should watch it?
Okay. Dave, you want to do this one, or
do you want me to do this one? I can do this.
Yeah, go for it.
So you can find us everywhere on the internets. You know, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the TikToks.
You can listen to it on Spotify.
You can listen to it on Spotify. I always forget about that one. Mm-hmm. So
you did the good marketing and made it just Careful Cantrip everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no like underscore on this platform or an asterisk after it on this one.
Luckily not. So our first campaign, you can find it on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube for the long form content. If you're looking for just kind of a snapshot of the type of games that we run, or specific scenes that we've put up on TikTok, which Rob, you got to get on TikTok, buddy. It's a game changer. I know it's a pain in the ass, but it really is. Well, it's a great short form for what you do, and I think it's definitely it's a great marketing tool from that perspective.
I should at the very least get TikTok and just claim the handle Robert Hartley GM before somebody else does, and then starts posting as me.
Hold on, be right back.
Yeah, why did I say that? Oh god,
I can get some cash out of this. I know it.
TikTok, quick, grab it.
Yeah, so yeah, we like I was saying earlier, we play a very pulpy game from that perspective. Lots of mystery.
I accidentally opened TikTok and it started playing in my ears, and I couldn't hear what you were saying. Sorry, start again.
We play a very pulpy game, so lots of action, lots of mystery. You know, there's either never a dull moment, or there is a dull moment, but it's just fun and games that we're doing a lot of role playing with. So there's really at no point where I felt there's a lull in our story, really. And there probably is in some parts, but I've never actually felt that before. Yeah. We are continuing in campaign 2. The same world. It's going to be a little bit skipped ahead. It's about 100 years ahead of where we ended off the last time. It's
so anyone who's playing short-lived lifespan characters of
he made sure my character was not going to make a return. He definitely said, in fact, all birds are dead.
Yeah.
when he was deciding how long in the future this is going to be, he's like, so Rob's character would be 80, maybe lived a good life, lives to 100, so I'll just make sure it's 100 years.
Well, it's really sad in my world because about 5 years after the first campaign, the bird flu just swept through, and there's no Eric Cochran left. It's the saddest thing.
I think it hit the owl folk too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe. Anyway, so it's going to be set in a giant metropolis. So a single cityscape is where the entire campaign is going to play out, and it's something
cool.
Interesting that I've never ran before because
that's really interesting because in coming up with encounters, the place I struggle most is urban encounters because I don't know.
Me too.
So you're setting the whole thing in a city. It's gonna be cool.
Well, that's the other thing about my sort of vice in all of this when I'm actually creating campaigns is I always like to tell stories that will really challenge myself. So when I found out that Rayna was playing a time wizard, I thought to myself, I want to tell a time travel story because I've never seen anybody get a time travel story right.
Yeah, I've always stayed away from it because I love time travel. I love time travel and hate all time travel movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm always too nitpicky about it, so I've always stuck away from it in my own games. But again, wanted to run some sort of time travel based arc at some point.
Well, I thought the same thing, and that's why I thought to myself, okay, how do I do this so I can tell a consistent story? It makes sense, but it incorporates time travel into it. Yeah. So instead of it being the time travel aspect being based on the characters, it was based on the big bad that they then felt the influence of. So it was the story of time travel, but its effects were the things that affected the player. So it wasn't, and they were able to manipulate, the decisions behind how to handle those those areas. So it was really interesting, and I think I did an okay job at it. I'm not Brandon Sanderson or anything along those lines. I'm not writing the next great American novel. But that it was the same reason why I wanted to do a giant urban cityscape is because I've never ran it before. I always struggle with urban stuff. So throw myself into the deep end. Just say, I'm going to build a campaign based on this. And hell or high water, I'm going to learn something.
Nice. Cool, man. That's an excellent viewpoint on it.
After the second session, the party's gonna elect to move out of the city.
I was just gonna say that as soon as the session begins, they're gonna be like, "What's on the outskirts of the city, though?
I hate it here.
What's outside the wall? Have you guys ever wanted to visit the ocean? You just have your entire party's made up of druids, druids and rangers, and they're like, great. Nature magics. So when does it begin? Campaign 2.
August 9th.
August 9th.
Upcoming Tuesday.
Super soon. Whoa, what a coincidence.
Right around the corner. It's almost like it was planned this way.
Almost like I planned to have you on. A perfect opportunity to promote it. So if you guys like the sound of it, and you should, because it sounds amazing, you guys should check out Careful Cantrip if you haven't done already. Head over to twitch.tv Careful Cantrip and drop a follow so that you're notified when it goes live. And then once it's on, so you do the sessions live, obviously, so that people can interact with it, and then you edit them for all the different platforms immediately after that. Stick it all up on YouTube and things. Yeah.
Episodes go up to YouTube on Sundays and our Spotify as well now. I think generally we've been catching up with Spotify, and then our socials usually go up the Tuesday after to try and sort of avoid any spoilers, give people the week to catch up.
Yeah, I do a behind the scene watch party of the latest Viva the Dirt League episode, but I make sure it's like 3 days afterwards so that people have got a few days to catch up on it. And because it's only a half-hour content, 3 days is usually enough time to be like, hey, if you've not watched a half-hour episode by now, that's on you. All right, let's ask these questions coming in from the chat. From B-Town MC, does streaming to the public affect how you play or how you want to be seen?
Oh, it's interesting.
Bobby, why don't you start us off with that one?
Sure. For me personally, yeah, I definitely, but I think it makes I end up having more fun with the influence of having an audience, I think.
Yeah.
Because it makes me want to push the envelope more and do the things that are a little crazier and maybe do, I live for that shock moment of like, oh, can he even do that? Is that one of those? So I definitely think it does affect how I play and everything, but it's all for the better, I think. I think I have more fun in streaming it than I do outside of it.
I think I would agree that I have a lot more fun like when I feel like there are other people also enjoying the game, but I think but I much prefer in-person stuff. So if I can stream with an in-person game like I'm doing tonight on the Dice Legends channel, then that's best of both worlds, because there's people watching, there's enjoying, and I get the in-person fun of actually seeing my players' body language and seeing their whole reactions and allowing them to have like small side conversations like in character while I'm talking to somebody over here that you just can't have when the mic's picking up everything. I'm still coming to terms with the fact that most games have to be online these days, particularly for streaming and content creation purposes. But sure. Yeah, but I personally just so much more prefer in-person gaming for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I would say that the big difference, especially when you're streaming as opposed to playing a home game, is at the end of the day you're putting on a production. There's a certain amount of there's lots of streamers out there who just kind of put their game online and think that their home game is going to be the next big Critical Role. It's not. It's home games are fun for the people playing, not necessarily fun for the people watching. So when you switch your mentality to it's a production first and a game second kind of thing, it definitely boosts your role play. It puts you in the sense of, okay, we are doing this for people live, and there has to be that entertainment value, or else you're not streaming to anyone at the end of the day. So it does have some effect in terms of things like the mechanics and the what's the word I'm looking for? The trueness, the authenticity of actually playing with the players at the table. I don't think it changes it that much. I mean, one of the key elements to succeeding on any kind of streaming platform with this kind of stuff is, you have to have that sense of camaraderie. If you naturally have that with each other, all the better, because your chemistry is going to be great. People are going to see that, and they're going to see that you're having fun, and want to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. So there's that element, but yeah, I would say it changes slightly in the mentality of your play style, not the actual game too much itself.
I think it's sort of bouncing off of what Dave said. Like, I think what's been the most interesting for us, like, because we all played together before we started in our home games, and then we started streaming. So watching all of us, I would say that all of our role play has been immensely affected. Even Dave's, like, his character work. None of us are trained actors, but our character work has like grown, and it's funny like how much like streaming online becomes sort of, there's a lot of things that come along with it that aren't just playing D&D.
Yeah.
And so like we constantly have reminders as a group, like, whoa, we're just having fun. And we sort of like reel it back in, and we're like, let's just sit down and play D&D and have fun
Right,
for
yeah.
those 3 hours. And I think that's been really, I don't know, bonding, I guess. Even more so, yeah.
It's good. It's good to have a moment like scheduled into your calendar to be like, have fun with your friends.
Yeah.
See, for me, I'm an overanalyzer anyway. So when we first started streaming, it's like everything that I was thinking about to say is like I thought too much about, because now I'm thinking, okay, now there's more than just my group.
Right. Yeah.
And then of course, so now that this is a year and a half in, 2 years now going, it's a lot. I'm a lot more comfortable. That's why with this next character, I'm going to be pushing myself a lot more. That first character, I was like, oh crap, what do I do? There's people watching now that have to be entertaining. But so my playing style did change compared to when just at the table, because it's just that whole concept of now people are watching. For me personally, took a while to get used to.
Yeah.
The butterflies before starting are no longer like they were before.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that first episode, sweating bricks. I mean, if you go and check out our YouTube, from episode 1 to like episode 50, you can see the progression of everybody, obviously.
For sure.
But it's just huge difference because everybody's so stiff. We're like, okay, what are we doing? And for me, it was even more so because I'm naturally more of an introvert anyway.
Right.
So, the spotlight's never been my thing, but I'm getting used to just being part of the group and just becoming part of it. So, yeah, it was a huge change for me at first, but now I think I've finally learned to just relax and just go with it.
Do you guys each have your own like favorite starting point from season 1? Like, if you're suggesting somebody does get into it because you all start and you're all a bit like stiff and stuff at the beginning, do you say like, just skip the first 10 or the first 20, or like what? Do you have your own jumping in point?
Once we get to Trellis for me.
Yeah, I think definitely skip the first 10. It's fine because it's an enclosed story. Like it's basically our growing pains.
It's even the same for Critical Role. I tell people don't start with start with season 1, but episode 30 onwards. Like 32, I think, is season.
My own family makes fun of me of how I acted on the first episode. I mean,
is that right?
They play back and like, look at this.
Look at this.
It's just a joke, but it's fun. I mean, it's an experience, and I'll never, I don't regret any of the awkwardness because it just helped me grow personally.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the first 10 episodes. So.
Oh, Bobby!
You're fired.
Well, it's interesting too because and that's actually that's a perfect jump off, because I generally have a rule of thumb. Levels 1 to 3, I dedicate those levels as this is my opportunity as like a prelude to the actual story to allow the bonding of the party. Because as soon as they hit level 3, now they're starting to come into their own. They're starting to find their own path by making their subclass. Granted, some people get it at 2, wizards and whatnot, but really it's the point of where it's kind of like I have those first 3 levels to make the party something. So it's almost like a standalone story. It has impact on the overall campaign, but very, very minuscule in the grand scheme of things.
So you like to start off any campaign at level 1?
Always level 1. Yeah, always start at level 1, and it's for that reason, because it's a hard thing to do to say, okay, why are these people sticking around together? Why are they deciding, especially when it's in the middle of a city? I need to come up with a reason for them to stay with each other when they have their own wants and needs and all those kind of things. And generally, I make sure that it's something insanely outlandish, like when we started our drop-in game, very first adventure, they were just heading along in a wagon. They were traveling along, just a bunch of people traveling along together. Immediately opened up a pit to Avernus. Like the road opened up in front of them, dropped them level 1 into Avernus. This last campaign, first
my character
episode,
died.
As you'd expect, you're going to hell. Just die on the heat alone.
A little later.
I told them up front, I was like, this is going to be a very, you will lose your characters potentially if you make the wrong decisions. So they were well aware of it beforehand, and they were all okay with that.
Yeah, I joined that one a little bit later, and Dave's like, whatever character you make, do not get attached to it. That was basically what I was told to join that one.
until they got to level 3, and then they had a certain level of, okay, there's a little bit of plot armor, more so than anything else.
Well, not Swiss Dave.
No, people were he was dying all the time.
I kill him all the time. That's just an unwritten rule. And then when we did our first live stream campaign, the very first episode, they got attacked. They were on a ship. They were headed to Trellis, into this continent of the wilds. Immediately got attacked by a kraken and ended up on a deserted island kind of thing. So it's always, here's a situation that you've been put into that you have to rely on the other people around you, and that's naturally going to bring out the tendencies to start building those relations and those bonds within the party.
Yeah, I like starting early levels for that reason, and giving them like the chance to get together, and giving them some external reason that forces them to work together. Unless it's a one shot. If it's a one shot, I'm like, you guys have been traveling together for 2 years. Let's wait so that we'd have to get over that whole thing.
Your friends, got it?
Yeah, your friends. You good? Cool. Let's move on. All right, we need to start getting through some of these questions. Luna Inverse says, not a question, but I wanted you to see it. I think it's so fantastic how you all value the comfort and enjoyment of everyone playing. It's an awesome attitude to have. It is, I agree. GM Workshop asks, can we get a 5-hour shopping session, please?
Absolutely.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
More than once.
Crimson Rockstar. Oh, I did see something the other day actually that said if you don't like if nobody at the table kind of likes shopping episodes, but they're kind of important, you just allow them to say like, hey, this is where you go shopping. We jump over it, and then in the future when you say I need a thing, we can be like, would you have thought to buy this thing? Yes, you would. Mark off the gold, and it's in your inventory. Like so, you can buy it retroactively as like a flashback moment rather than like actually having to play it out in the moment, which is kind of cool.
Well, it's funny because I see what you're saying, but I typically save my most whimsical and memorable characters as shopkeepers. There's
Yep.
There you go. Sir William
Trying to buy
Titanus.
bracers from Sir Titanus. Can't do it.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Andre Wilburo.
Andre Wilburo. Again, I mean, these are like, it's not necessarily something that they, some players are like, I don't want to do a shopping episode, but I love the NPCs that are in the shopkeepers district.
It makes them annoying, so secretly we never want to go shopping again.
Yeah. Crimson Rockstar asks, question for the Careful Cantrip cast. Are there any spoilers you could drop about Campaign 2 that new viewers would love to hear about?
He's trying so hard.
What can I drop?
Give us a spoiler. Give us an exclusive.
In 4 days we'll know everything.
Short rest. Short rest exclusive.
I
don't edit quickly, so anything you say now won't be on YouTube for a long time. They'll only find it if they go to my VODs.
I will say this. They'll meet in a tavern.
Everybody starts in a tavern.
We didn't know that either.
We didn't know that.
Cool,
yeah. Thanks, Crimson.
I didn't say they would start in a tavern. I said they would meet in a tavern.
Are you guys hoping that the D&D movie has them all starting in a tavern?
Yes,
I mean,
right?
it feels like it should, right?
Yeah.
It should. It has to.
All right, Redial asks, question for everyone, what's your first character you ever played in D&D? For me, it was an elven monk. I was joining for a one-shot, and I was like, didn't know anything about the game, and the guy said, what do you want to play? I said, I don't know, what is there, and what sort of niche is there to fill in the party? And he said, oh, you can be this, 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 and this, and I was like, I don't know what those mean. And he's like, oh, well, fighters are like this, and monks are kind of like Jedi, and I was like, stop there, I'll go monk. And so I went with an elven monk.
My first character was a barbarian named Axel Thorne that I would redo lyrics on the spot, particular to 80s hair metal.
Because of Axl Rose.
Yeah.
Axel Thorne.
Nice.
I don't remember the name of my first character, but it was a human paladin 2nd edition.
Human paladin. I played a human paladin in 2nd edition with Lord Gazumba. He made me a character. Have you guys met Lord Gazumba? I forget who among my friends know each other.
Yeah. I was on Jay's show a little while ago. I insulted D&D right while Luke Gygax jumped in the chat. It was great. And Ed Greenwood. I was just talking pure shit and
Perfect timing.
In true form.
Awesome. Cool.
In true form, yeah.
Yeah, I played a human paladin. How about you, Rayna? What was your first character?
It was a elf ranger beastmaster, and I had a pet fairy dragon.
Oh,
Fey dragon? Pseudo dragon. That's it. Yeah, pseudo dragon. Yeah.
Pseudo dragons aren't beasts. You can't have a.
I know it was homebrewed. Everybody
beasts.
relax.
You can't. It's funny. The funniest thing about all of the pushback on the movie trailer about the druid turning into an owlbear. The funniest thing is that I never saw anybody complaining about it, but I've seen a million people defending it, being like, "It's fine to turn into." Yeah, we're all saying it's fine. Who's saying it's not? Because I haven't seen anybody saying it's not. Stop arguing against imaginary arguments.
It's content.
Bobby.
Well, I was gonna say that Lucy's the only character I really have played.
True,
yeah. Half-elf,
wild
magic sorcerer.
There you go.
But I guess if you're counting that 4th edition one shot,
we don't count 4th edition.
No.
Yeah, it was a water genasi mage knight or something like that. I don't really.
Now let's get into the details of why you hated it so much. GM Workshop
doing no direction.
GM Workshop asked when you said I'm not making the next American novel. He said, "Are you, however, writing the great Canadian novel?"
Ooh, yes,
maybe.
Maybe. We'll see. Action Surge 5e asks, so new to streaming live plays here. It's not. I'm so new to streaming live plays here. It's not funny. I decided I would run 4 campaigns per week. Getting any tips on getting viewers? Any tips on getting viewers? I would. My tips would be don't run 4 campaigns a week. Run 1 campaign a week and use the extra time to focus on improving the stream. If you're interested in getting viewers, sound quality is the most important thing. If something doesn't sound right, people will turn off. People are much more willing to put up with bad visuals than they are bad audio in general. So,
and the other big piece of that is don't rely on Twitch for discoverability.
Yeah,
you absolutely have to.
Put
one thing that people.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who have asked me, okay, what how do you grow on Twitch, kind of thing. And unequivocally, I always tell them is that be prepared that this is going to be another job for you. The amount of work you put in behind the scenes is nowhere near the amount of work that you put in on stream, like in any way, shape, or form. Rayna and Bobby alone have spent the last, out of the last 72 hours, I would say the last 70 hours just working on background content for socials, for everything along. But you have to be on every single platform. You have to have consistent stuff that are going up and make sure that it's branded consistently throughout everything.
Yes.
There's a lot of people.
Brand consistency is important.
Yeah, and TikTok is a perfect example of that. We've had a certain level of success on TikTok, and we always only show clips from our show. It's always about that. The minute that you step off brand, especially when you're going from short-term to long-term content, if it's not consistent, you're not going to see the crossover.
Yeah, that's the thing that I do find a lot of mistakes are made with YouTube Shorts and stuff. They're a different beast to the YouTube videos, but if you use them, I've started dabbling in YouTube Shorts, and they're usually just like short snippets of something that's happened in Twitch Tales, which means that if somebody sees that and goes, "Oh, I like that. I wonder what the context was of that scene, or that weird voice that he was putting on, or the roles that he did," then they'll go and they'll watch the longer video and be like, "This is the same thing. It's just longer of it." Whereas if they watch something on YouTube Shorts that's me doing a thing, and then they come over to my channel going, "This is funny," or "This is informative," or whatever, and they realize my long form content is nothing like that, then you're not going to get the clicks to subscriber, whatever the word is. Words.
Yeah, and so my rule of thumb is long-term content, whatever you're doing, if you're streaming it, that is literally your content. Everything else that you do in terms of the marketing behind it for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever the case is, it should be from that content, just period.
Agreed. Action Surge asks, this is the first stream of any of yours I've seen. How many players do you each usually host? And do you do mostly theatre of the mind, or is there a map and combat involved in your play? I'm desperate for the loo, so I'm just going to leave you guys to answer that question while I nip away to pee real quick.
No worries.
Don't get me cancelled.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, here's a shot.
If you want to go to Rob's OnlyFans, you can find his secret path. So Generally, I like to run for very large tables. That's kind of the way that I've always worked. I'm very comfortable with 8 players at the table. This upcoming campaign, we're only playing with 6, so that's a little small for my liking. But generally, that's how I do. I know Rob plays runs for 4 people on Viva La Dirt League.
Yeah.
So it's really just whatever you're comfortable with at the end of the day. However you want to run. But yeah, generally we run for a larger table just because I prefer having different story elements that I can play with from that perspective.
And for the second part of the question, we do have visuals typically for our battles. And typically it's in Roll20.
We do have dreams. Dave, just since we have time, since Rob, left us here with this channel.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have trusted us. But
I know.
What are we gonna do? Should I start twerking?
Oh God.
Oh God, here we go.
Can we talk about Careful Cantrip Platinum?
No,
Yes.
talk about Careful Cantrip Platinum.
Bobby,
Sorry.
please explain.
Guys, Careful Cantrip Platinum. It's well on its way.
What were you saying, Rayna?
So exciting.
Oh, we do have dreams because Dave just got he didn't just get it, but he got a 3D printer. So I know that he has dreams of eventually transferring our Roll20 maps to live maps with like those crazy cool smoke machine things and like a 3D background kind of thing. So dreams one day.
All in good
But
time.
for now. Yeah.
Interesting.
But sometimes we do theater of the mind battles, but we do.
Yeah, when it's something unexpected.
It's just quick and you just turn. It's not a key point battle. Then
Yeah.
You never know when your player's gonna go and punch the innkeeper, and then it's it's on.
When so many of the combat features of a class revolve around like the distance between you and the monster, or whether you can target a cone of people or whatever, like you kind of need to.
Yeah.
You kind of need
the mind
to.
becomes difficult for sure.
Yeah. I prefer Theatre of the Mind when I'm doing an online game because I'm usually running my own OBS and I've got 2 monitors, but like one of them's filled with my notes for the session, one of them's got my OBS, one of them's got like the Zoom call that we're whatever it is. Like things are so spread out that. And I'm rife with tech goblins. Like for some reason, I'm one of these people who is cursed with always having problems with technology that I can't easily fix. Which is why I have an emote in my channel for just a goblin chewing on a wire. I think introducing a virtual tabletop on top of that and having to keep a track of it and running things, and then you're gonna get people going, I can't move my character. Why can I? Wait, I can't see anything. Have I not given you dark vision yet for this Fog of War thing? Oh, cool.
Can I give a massive spoiler for season 2?
I mean, you're the
Sure.
the one in charge.
Are we hearing it first too?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
So one element that I incorporate a lot of is I like to incorporate the viewers as much as humanly possible. And Rob does something very similar with Twitch Tales, but it's a lot more difficult when you're running for a group and then trying to get the viewers involved at the same time. However, I can tell you this, that one of the new channel point redemptions that no one from the community has heard about yet, this is first time being introduced live, is you will now, as viewers, be able to
take over the role of the DM.
Close. You will be able to summon a minion or a creature during combat, and chat will collectively be able to control that minion and what it does within combat. Yeah,
You're gonna die.
All in real time.
That's what's going to happen. We're going to die, but
all our
taking
chat
me
members
forever
that
to work out
keep
the
yelling
technical
TPK
aspects
are
of
now
it.
really going to have their opportunity to do it now.
So they use the channel point redemptions to summon a minion, and this is for the party, like a companion for the bad guy.
For the villain, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and then there's gonna have. And then they're going to have actions that they can. Essentially, it's actions that they can vote from.
But you are going to decide in each battle, like what the minion will be, like appropriate to the.
There's going to be a standard. So essentially, what I'm thinking, it's going to be half of what the average party member level is.
Right. Ooh, cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Is it over? I don't like spoilers.
Did you actually not listen to it, Bobby? Oh
I did.
no.
I did not listen.
That's
It was a
very-
channel
very
point
cute.
redemption.
What,
Just,
Why don't you
I
just tell me right when I get
specifically took my headphones off so that I.
You summarized the whole thing. For me.
Well, because you're gonna need to know how it works, but whatever.
Nah, I
No,
don't
he
need to
doesn't.
know.
We're
I'll
just
explain it on
Something else
Tuesday.
will
all
happen.
right.
Excellent stuff. I'm amazed that you run for 8 people and that's your preference. You're the first DM I've ever seen whose preference isn't 4 or 5.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of having a big party
I hate
because
it.
I find that the party dynamics, I mean the one-on-ones, and to have that many combinations of building relationships with one another and building out their stories together and all of those kind of things, and then having that breadth of 8 different arcs that I can incorporate into the overall story is just
Overwhelming
chef's kiss
is
to
what
me.
it is. It's just too much. It's like no
Overwhelming.
time for any individual person to get time to shine if there's 8 of them playing, and the combat must take forever. I can't imagine it. I've played with 7 people once and I was like, never again. Not. No.
I think we've only had one instance where combat took an entire episode, and it was like one of the most pivotal episodes ever. It started off as a giant meme. I said, you got to go to this brothel, Baron Von Jugs, and then they fought against the super tough divas whose names were Syphilius, Herapes, and Gonorrhea. And it was just it was this huge joke walking into it, and then by the end of it, it was like players had gone down. Like we actually lost one of the characters in that moment.
Spoilers.
One of the players had to make a decision of who they'd try and revive, kind of thing, because they had this element of control over life and death. It was really interesting, but it just goes to show how quickly just a meme can turn into something so serious and so impactful.
It's
and
as a
crazy.
minor spoiler, that's one of the episodes of season 2 of D&D Logic. So I wrote a comedy skit series about D&D called D&D Logic for the Viva guys. And season 2 we've started the writing process of it, and one of the ideas is about this joke character becoming a very serious character, sort of thing. Like somebody's session 1, I'm Poopy Monchick Face, and it's like, Poopy Monchick Face, and then like 30 episodes in, you're like, no, Poopy!
It's very serious. Yeah.
You've got to let me go for the greater good of the Von Schick Face clan.
Amazing.
All right, we've still got questions to ask. We'll try and get through them. This Action Surge says, no, that was the one we just asked. Yeah, boy. Action Surge also says, do you have any favourite house rules that you use very often or all the time? Favourite house rules?
Rule of cool.
Rule of cool. Yeah.
They should basically just bake that into it, though, shouldn't they? Like this, that's barely a house rule at this point. They do say like
true.
DM has right to overrule anything else.
I think that is a rule.
Yeah,
Just think-
DM
Yeah.
like
I'm pretty
in-
sure that's every second line of the
Yeah.
DM.
they're like, oh, unless it doesn't work for you, and then use it whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I'm very loose with my overall rules. And there's 2 caveats that I make in terms of all of that. If it's just completely outlandish and it doesn't make sense, like I want to jump 50 feet across this volcano opening, you're gonna fall in lava most likely if you try and do this. So, but I kind of go under the basis of if it's going to create a memorable moment and I'm just stretching the rules by 1 or 2 little things, I will always let fate decide. So I'll give a prime example is at the end of our last campaign, I brought back one of the dead players that was now an enemy that became a summons of this evil hag, and they had become her champion. So they had to fight against one of their old members.
Right.
The cleric had the idea to cast Raise Dead on him. Technically, it wouldn't have worked. It was past 10 days. It takes an hour to do the actual spell kind of thing. But there was such an impact on that character's story because he had been losing friends along, and he's been trying so hard to protect these people that to take that away from him because of rules as written would have been an injustice to that player.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? We're going to let fate decide. And I let them pick low or high, and I rolled a D20. And that's always how I go with it. So do I have specific home rules that I apply to? Yeah, I mean, there's some, you can use a potion as a bonus action, taking out weapons and whatnot. It doesn't take you an action to do kind of thing. But generally, I'm really willing to bend any rule within the rule book
if it's going to make something impactful or memorable for the players. Because at the end of the day, I've never had a player come back to me and say, oh, that ruling you made to allow for them to hit for that double damage kind of thing, that was incredibly done. But they will always come back and be like, that moment where, you know, I could jump off the cliff and I actually landed on that horse and rode into battle for it. Those are the moments they're going to remember forever. No, I'm serious. Those are going to be the most important moments.
Yeah, I had one of my best compliments that I ever got was a guy who was like, you know, when we were just recapping just then, like what had happened so far, I was picturing myself in those situations. Like, I don't remember us sitting at the table during those sessions. I remember us, like, actually acting that shit out.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Same house rules, lots and lots and lots of house rules. You can find most of them on my Patreon because I've come up with so many. I'm basically going in the route of the way that Pathfinder came about. I've gone like, I love the game except for this and this and this and this and this, and I've made my own rules for everything.
Oh, so that's why you and Mandari get along so well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to eventually create my own system. I'm sure it's inevitable at this stage. But yeah, I've got a bunch of house rules. But in your example there of like the cleric casting Raise Dead to deprive the evil guy of the zombie thrall, whatever you want to call it, that's an example of where I would go, you're trying to use a spell in a way that it's not meant for. So make some sort of spellcasting check to see how strong you are with your own spells and like whether you can manipulate your spells as you're casting them to do things they're not meant to do. And I'd set a DC for it and be like, yeah, sure. And then if you meet that with your spellcasting check, you can manipulate your spell to do that thing because it's cool. The only times that I sort of don't allow that is when they're trying to do the effect of another spell with a different spell. They're trying to use Firebolt as a ray of frost. I'm like, there's another spell that does that, and if you wanted that spell, you should have taken that spell, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there.
Geez, these questions keep coming in. These people are enjoying this conversation, it seems. GM Workshop asks non-careful cantrip question. Okay.
Wow, we'll just leave.
You guys leave. You guys all go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And I'll plug your OnlyFans. Do you feel 5e is?
Caught that.
I'm always listening. Do you feel 5e is nearing the end of its life? Would you switch to 5.5 or a different system if and when you get bored with it? Yes and yes. I feel like 5e is... it's kind of like the polyps in the ocean that don't technically ever die of old age because they just like revert back to their baby stages and they start again. I feel like with the earlier editions they had a delineation where they went, bam, here's a new edition, or here's a new half edition. Whereas with 5e, with the introducing the stuff from the Monsters of the Multiverse or whatever it was, where they started to make legacy versions of things, it feels like, oh, 5e is super popular, let's not ruin that with 5.5. They've just kind of blended what would have been 5.5 into 5, and things are changing, and they're ignoring things that they established in the early stages of 5e. So this next future of D&D or whatever they called it, that's coming in 2024. I'm not sure what it'll look like, but everybody's saying it's 5.5 because they've said it's going to be backwards compatible.
Right, yeah.
I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm not a fan of the direction that they're taking a lot of things, with it being there's a lot of homogenization in the classes and the races and things. They don't seem to make a difference which race or class you're picking, because they're like, you can pick your size. Are you a small or a medium Harangon? Are you a small or a medium Owlin? You can choose your race and then also choose the size, choose your walking speed. Everybody can choose their own languages and choose their own attributes as to which ones you're getting. And so it's getting in the direction, in my opinion, of being like, what's the point? What's the difference then? Like, why have different races at all? Why not just have like a single, like, kind of like GURPS, like a general utility character, and then you can just describe them however you want them to be. Oh, I'm a bird person, I'm a lion person, and it's all the same. I'm not a fan of the sort of homogenized nature that they're going towards. I think your choices in character creation and the monsters you face and stuff should have a difference. So I don't know if that means it's going to become more popular or less. I don't know enough about the industry at large to have a say on that, but I feel like 5e is definitely coming to a close and they're going to move into 5.5. I just don't know if they'll make a solid line in the sand when they do that.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Talking about your OnlyFans
page.
Yeah, your OnlyFans.
Fancy says, any more plans for Funge and Fued? And with Rob.
Funge and Fued. Yes. Yes, there is.
Yeah, there's going to be more Funge and Fued.
There's going to be more Funge and Fued, and who knows? There might be some rematches that that we see at some point in time.
She says, any more plans with Rob as well?
It's part of the rematches.
She's committing you to inviting me on your channel again.
Oh, you have open policy. I'll just give you the logins for my Zoom.
Sweet. I'll just start streaming from your. Careful Cantrip. I've somehow got your stream key. Welcome to Careful Cantrip.
Yeah, as long as you don't screw up my my sign out line.
No, never. Nobody would ever dare. I certainly would never dare to go on somebody else's stream and then screw up their outro. Would I, Hops and Dragons?
Yeah, so it's let me ring up Paul for a minute.
Yeah.
Redial asked, question for everyone, what is the greatest or most epic D&D moment you've ever had?
Oh, I can take this one.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
Rob was there for it.
Think.
Well, so was Dave. But I think it was in our game before we started streaming, and one of Swiss Dave's characters, they always die. I don't know why. He just has this curse on him, and one of his characters was seemingly taken into whatever. We were looking for his character for a very, very long time, like months of trying to find his character. And like my character was like, we have to find him, and we're going through this dungeon looking for him. Everyone's like, he's dead, leave him. And I'm like, no, we gotta go. Anyways, we find his body. Okay, we find the character's body. There's an NPC there that has the option to bring him back to life, but that NPC would lose their life.
Oh.
And our group, me thinking, okay, let's do it. Our group sat there for like 3 hours discussing the morality of what to do. And that was the first time that I think like our group really got into character, because it wasn't like, well, it's an NPC, obviously we're going to save the PC. It was like we were talking about like 2 lives and how do you value that, and then we took a group vote and it was tied until Rob's character.
Oh, nice.
And
which way did you tip it, Rob?
I vaguely remember this episode.
Vaguely.
Just the episode that Rayna is specifically chosen as the most epic and memorable in history, and you're like, maybe.
Well, that's because I voted for the NPC because my character felt that was the right thing to do.
Yep.
And her character was trying to manipulate mine into voting her way, but it didn't.
You betrayed me. I'm still not over it.
No.
Wow.
But I had reasons. I thought it was all a trick. That it was all ploy that was being presented from us to separate the party, and kill an ally that was in the midst of helping us. So why in that aspect would my character be like, oh well, this dead person here, which has been gone for a while, he's gone, he's written out of my memory. This person here who's helping us alive, why would I, in hopes, help? Think that this would raise.
Give up something that you have that is helpful for the
Incredibly
possibility of something else.
It made perfect sense at the time until I realized it wasn't a trick, and then I kind of felt bad a little bit at the end. But
so this is the sort of thing that, given that same sort of predicament for your new character, who is much more emotional in the way that they
it depends on how
decisions.
I felt about the person that we were talking about.
Yeah. Cool. A very epic moment indeed.
There's multiple most epic moments, and they happen all the time for me. It's when I see the players go from adventurers to heroes in the story. And that moment where they finally, I was talking about earlier about how, I run the big bads here going this way, the players are going this way, they start to rub up against each other, and then they become in direct conflict. Yeah. And in that moment where they finally accept we are the heroes and we have to go do this thing is just such an amazing moment for any DM if you play it right. There's a phenomenal book out there called Playing Dirty by, I think the author's pen name is John Wick. but it's all about how to be using every trick in the book to make adversity to the
get
players.
revenge on your dog being killed.
Not necessarily to get revenge, but how to use every trick in the book to build those characters up until their point they are the heroes. And he uses Die Hard as an example, because if you watch the Die Hard movies, the entire time he's like, we got to call the cops. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then there's that moment where he becomes the hero, and there's so much emotion in that moment and so much energy within that moment. To see that happen live at the table is such a phenomenal thing to watch every single time.
It's a good moment. All right. Jesus, people keep asking questions as quickly as we're answering them. We got to go rapid fire round. All right.
Okay,
bonus action heroes asks, what actor would you like to play your current characters or BBEG if a movie ever happened?
Anyone but Nicolas Cage.
Anyone. So like
anyone but Nicolas Cage or Matt Damon. Anyone else.
Dame Maggie Smith.
Yep. Fine.
John Malkovich.
My campaign 1 character, Zoe Deschanel.
Oh, nice.
Well, my campaign 1 character was a bird, so anybody really could. So
yeah, gonna be in such heavy prosthetics anyway.
Big bird.
My
Big bird.
my BBG, I think Adam Driver, is it the fellow from the sequels of Star Wars? Yeah, he's
You are gonna poach one of my players with that.
Just with
all right, Action Surge 5e asks, I have to go now, guys. Love watching. I followed. Catch you all later. No need to read this aloud. Just wanted to make sure you all saw it.
Well, thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for being here, Action Surge. Good to have you here. All right, Marie asks, if there was another medium like film, TV, literature, etc. that you could tap into, even if it seems like the stuff of dreams, what would it be? Good question.
Animated. Voice acting.
Yeah.
I'm not an actor, but I'd love to try, and I'd love to animate our entire series. That would be so cool.
That would be weird.
Yeah, it'd be so good.
It'd be amazing.
I'd love to. I would love to turn my home games into novels. I've got the notes from all of them and stuff, so I'd love to at some point. Maybe that's a goal for my retirement when I'm finally finished with this campaign.
Yeah.
One day. If you live that long.
Yeah. I was talking to them about, like, we were just kind of joking about like what we would do if we ran a second campaign after this one's over and stuff. And I just slip of the tongue called this first campaign Episode 1. And he goes, Episode 1, this 20 level long 10-year campaign is going to be the first episode of an entire series.
Have you ever played Epic level?
No, not yet.
No?
Not yet.
It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah. But graphic novel for me. I'd love to see our stuff in graphic novels.
Oh, yeah. That'd be cool.
Comic book style.
How about you guys, Bobby, Rob?
Just probably an animation.
Animation.
Honestly, I just wish I had the time to just turn clips into animatics.
Yeah.
Like, just
animation takes so
cool
long.
moments and just do animatics. Like I'd be happy with that. Just a compilation of those.
Stickmen. Over. Yeah. Rob, what's your
comic? I'd love to see it in a comic.
Yeah. All right, and the last question we've caught up. Yeah, B-Town MC says, can table play affect real friendships? I think absolutely it can. Yeah, I think it can strengthen relationships in that you can definitely learn about people and how they like to play. Same as anything you're doing for several hours every week or two, you're going to be strengthening relationships over that stuff. But I think if you're not careful and you are touching on things where your players
you can trip.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you later. That's perfect outro. If you're not careful about the way that you're handling things like the PvP and the in-character tensions, then yeah, you can definitely spill over into, if you've not got open communication between the players and everybody doesn't feel comfortable airing any grievances, then yeah, table play can affect your relationships.
And I think that's just going further to what you were saying earlier, is when players get completely immersed where they feel like they are their characters, you essentially build this whole new set of memories with the people around the table, where it's like, you're out and 5 years later you could be hanging out at a bar and you're talking about, oh, remember that time where we killed the troll from under the bridge? Oh yeah, that was crazy, and you lost your arm, and oh my god, that was insane.
Yeah, so, it's we and you and I, not
exactly,
they, not
exactly.
our characters.
these moments that we build at the table are ingrained memories, and it's things that, you sit there for 3 or 4 or 5 hours or however long you play for, but when you actually inhibit the character and become that character, to live through vicariously through them, those are your real memories. That's actually things that are happening within your mind's eye. So it builds a much stronger bond with the people around the table. And like the people I play with, they've become like I said earlier, they've become my closest friends because we've had all these experiences together, not because I actually like them outside the game.
I was your flower girl.
Yeah.
You were my flower girl for my wedding. That's right.
Yeah.
I was tuned in for your wedding as well, but unfortunately with the buffering, just couldn't. It was,
You
just
missed
wasn't
it,
working.
man. I did great. I guess they looked good.
It looked like an incredible venue, and everybody looked very handsome. Yeah, congratulations on that again. And I think on that very pleasant note, we'll leave it there. Thank you for all of the questions that came in, everybody. Thank you for joining me, Careful Cantrip. Thank you to Dennis Gamer, who had to leave.
Thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure. As I say, this is one of my only opportunities to actually ever catch up on the ins and outs of what my friends and colleagues, I suppose, are doing out there on the internet and what you're making. Yeah. So it was a pleasure to have you on. If you ever need to promote anything else in future, you can always reach out as well.
Well, allow me to make this formal invitation. At some point in time, when you've got the time, we would love to have you on as a guest for season 2.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll make it work. I will make it work.
Cool.
All right, we'll leave it there. I will give us a raid over to Dice Legends. That's appropriate because I'm I'm stopping this to go and pack my bag and then go to the airport to go and be on Dice Legends tonight. So it's appropriate to raid you guys over there in case anybody's in the chat that hasn't heard of them before. They are a New Zealand studio company that does D&D, the in-person D&D stuff with a three camera setup and stuff. Very epic story and low magic setting, which is not often you see that in D&D. So it's a pretty cool one. I will be joining them tonight to celebrate their 1,000 followers on Twitch as part of a 27-hour marathon that they're running.
Wow.
So.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, stick around for the raid. They're a lot of fun. Make sure to drop them a follow. If you haven't also done so, go and check out Careful Cantrip and give them a follow as well. Get ready for season 2. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, everybody. I can only make these because of generous support from patrons, so please do consider supporting me over there if you can afford it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.